sitting on a helicopter with my feet dangling out the side, sitting next to the world's most lethal killers, blades spinning, radio chatter going, ready to lift off to give the justice of America to whatever poor soul that didn't know that was their last night on Earth. It's real to be 6, 8 feet away from an armed insurgent with an AK that has a chance to kill you as much as you do them. It's fast, it's furious, it's raw, it's awesome.
The kind of person that can go out on a nightly basis and go shoot people in the face and come home and go to sleep right afterwards. Can you select for that?
I guess we do.
Welcome to the podcast, man.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, dude, it is, I don't throw this around lightly. It is an honor to have you, seriously. For people, Brent, that may not be familiar with your story, you spent 20 years in Army Special Operations, half of which as a Green Beret and the other half as a Delta Force operator, where you split your time between working as an assaulter and as a sniper. 13 combat deployments to Iraq, Afghanistan, and Syria. Purple Heart recipient from being shot on an operation in Afghanistan, which we'll definitely get into. Medically retired in 2018 as a master sergeant. And as if all that service wasn't enough for you, you have now started First Responders Coffee Company, which donates portions of all of the company's sales to first responder causes. So just to make a point of that, the company's sales, not the company's profits. So you guys started in November of 22?
Correct.
So you've been in business for a little over a year now.
Yep.
The company hasn't turned a profit, which is totally standard.
The opposite of a profit.
Right. You haven't taken a check, and the opposite of taking a check. But you guys have still donated over $20,000 to end-of-watch causes, a bunch of other first responder causes. So
Yep.
I wanted to make a point of that. You and Drew, your brother, and the rest of the team over there, you guys should be super proud of that. So when I say, dude, it is an honor to have you, I really mean it. So thank you for coming out here too, where it's not so warm and sunny like where you're from, and
No.
sitting with me for a couple hours.
Well, thanks. It's humbling to hear that. Dude, I don't know why it is. It's always hard to hear that, but it doesn't go unappreciated. I really appreciate you saying that and pointing out the good things that the company does, and pointing out how little money I've made in my first business venture. But all jokes aside, we're super proud of why we do it and what we've done and what we'll do in the future.
So let's start it at September 10th, 2001, Tucker's Farm and Garden Center.
Yeah.
What was going on in your life at the time?
What had always gone on in my life. The Tucker's Farm and Garden Center was a staple in my life. It's something my grandfather started in the 70s. My dad took over in the 80s. It was something I was always wanting to be a part of and wanting to take over, from my dad. So of all my friends, and I mean, I'm not saying we're in a one-stoplight town in Florida. It's a smaller town, but there's a lot of friends who just wanted to get out of Sanford, Florida, and couldn't wait to get out and wanted to go do bigger and better things or just different things, and had bigger plans. Not me. I had small plans. Stay in my hometown, work in my family business. And that's what I legitimately wanted to do. I wanted to live and die in Sanford, Florida, and I was fine with that. There's a lot of that kind of simple man mentality still sticks with me today. I can have the same thing for breakfast. I can go to the same places all the time. I don't need to travel the world and see exotic places. Yeah, ironically enough, most of those people stayed in Sanford, and I was the one that ended up leaving and going all over the world and doing things. So September 10th was just another normal, boring day in my life, and that's how I liked it. So September 11th, the very next 24 hours later, very different.
So were you at the feed store?
I was at the feed store. September 11th, roughly between the hours of 9 and 10 a.m. when it all kind of kicked off. We had a little, I don't know if you remember these. It's like a boombox looking radio, but it had like I've had to guess, a 4-inch TV in it that you could, get the local stations with. We had one of those there, and the only reason why we had it at the feed stores watch football games on a Saturday. We could get into football games. A customer comes in and says, "Hey, I think a plane just flew into the trade center in New York." We thought that was weird. A couple more customers come in and say that. And I don't remember what made us eventually pull out the TV and be like, let's turn this thing on. But we did. We turned, we pulled it out, dusted it off, and now we're waiting on customers and listening to the newscast. And we had 2 stores. We had one in Sanford and one on DeLand. I call the DeLand location, and I said, "Hey guys, just so you know, there's a plane flew into the World Trade Center, and they're thinking it may be a terrorist attack." And the people on the other end that knew me very well, they said, "Brent, we're busy this morning. We don't have time for you." I said, "No, I'm not joking. I'm serious." They're like, yeah, right, Brent. And they hung up the phone on me. They thought I was calling in some prank. And then I watched the second plane hit the tower. And now we're like, "No, we're under attack." I called DeLand back up. I said, "A second plane just flew in the trade tower and the World Trade Center." They said, "Brent, not going to tell you again. We're busy. These aren't funny jokes." And that's how September 11th started for me. Ended up working the rest of the day, working and glued to the TV every chance I got to try to get updates. We slowly find out about the Pentagon, slowly find out about the Pennsylvania, plane that crashed out in the middle of nowhere. And by the time I went to sleep that night, it was or got ready to go to bed, it was certain that we had been attacked. 3,000 Americans had died. Our nation's capital, our Pentagon, had been also attacked, and more Americans, had plummeted to their death in an airline in an attempt to save what could have been the next attack. Now, those were still theories at the time, but those were all out there, and I couldn't go to sleep. I couldn't shake it. I knew something life-changing had happened, and I wasn't much of I never thought about joining the military, but I always consider myself a person of values, and that I'd stand up, for the right thing, and I just felt like something may have just come across my plate that I can't ignore.
So how long from going to sleep that night was it until you enlisted?
Obviously, that's September 11th. I went and grabbed, within the next few days, I went and grabbed my little brother, who was strung out in a drug house on drugs. Sounds like a horrible thing to say about your brother and bring up on a podcast, but don't worry. That has a good ending to it, and like the highs and lows of all of our lives, this is what it took to get him out of his low. The recruiter's office didn't open up for a little bit, and we ended up signing the dotted papers on September 27th, 2001. So I'm sure I got into a recruiter's office within the following week, did preliminary paperwork, testing, drug testing, and then signed the papers on September 27th, 2001, which was basically as fast as I could.
Yeah. And to your point, your brother's still in the military, isn't he?
He's still in the military. He's overseas right now, defending airspace in the Middle East, carrying on our original job.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll get there.
Yeah.
So what made you decide Army?
I knew, even though I came from a very pro-military family, my dad wanted to join. He wanted to be a fighter pilot so bad. His eyesight was not 20/20, so he had no chance of doing what he wanted to do in the military. So he continued the family business. That being said, we went to air shows. I watched every Vietnam special, that came on. We were very pro-military, but I didn't really know much about the military. I really didn't know much about the military. I had a family friend that the little I knew about Chief Butters is that he was in the Army. He got in an Army uniform and went to work for the Army. Of course, not a whole lot. There were indicators there that should have made sense. We don't live near a base. What base does he work at? Oh, he's in the Army National Guard. All I hear is Army. I go to Chief Butters and I say, hey, I want to join. I don't know anything about this. I thought I'd come to you because you're in the Army. He says, I tell you what, I'll put you in touch with a recruiter. I want you to come, you should join the Army National Guard where I work. Come work with me. And I was like, okay, if that's what Chief Butters says I should do, that's what I'm going to do. He retired as a CW4, by the way. He's a great guy. Man, he's an awesome, awesome man. And so I joined the National Guard, really not even knowing what it is fully that I'm joining. Eventually, I figured out that it's a 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks a year. You can get called up at any time. By the way, we're at war. We're probably going to get called up. So it kind of quenched my thirst for what I wanted, which was I wanted to join the military. I wanted to go to war. Feel like I did, when my country was attacked, I did something about it. And then go back to my mundane life. And then go back to my mundane life of working at a feed store. That was the plan. I believe God laughed at that plan. That's been a reoccurring theme in my life over and over and over again, as I'm sure it is everyone's. But yeah, God must think I'm a comedian at this point.
So, you and your dad used to go to air shows. Did you ever have any moments when you were overseas and somebody called in CAS and, the fast movers come in and you're like, fuck, I wish my dad could see this right now?
Ironically enough, you would think that you would think at those times is when I would think it. I thought that I did think that all the time, but it wasn't those times. Ironically enough, he was always sitting on a helicopter with my feet dangling out the side, sitting next to the world's most lethal killers that just happened to let me hang out with them for the night. And, blades spinning, radio chatter going, ready to lift off to give the justice of America to whatever poor soul that didn't know that was their last night on earth, knowing that you're a part of that and thinking, God, I wish my dad could see me now. I thought about it almost every time.
So what were your parents like?
My mom's amazing. Absolutely amazing. She countered my dad, which my dad growing up, my dad was he was a hard man. He wasn't to be, I didn't grow up with my best friend. That wasn't my dad. My dad was my dad. And, you talk to him like your dad. He treated you like his son. He worked 60, 70 hours a week in this family business. And, when he came home from work, you better not have heard anything that your mom had to put up with, or else he'll take it out on you. And it sounds like I'm painting this picture of a guy that I didn't like, or was, a pain, or a detriment to my life. I wouldn't have my dad raise me any other way. My dad raised me into a man. He instilled values into me. I don't think I knew my dad loved me, but my dad showed love in a different way. My dad showed love to me by providing for me, by ensuring I had everything I needed in life, that he would take that burden of work, and through his sacrifice of work, I got to live a good life. Now, that didn't exactly sink in as a 7-year-old with a hard-nosed dad, but it sure as hell did later. And he's a big teddy bear now, as a grandfather. But my mom, although she was very loving, she was a pretty hard-nosed woman herself. There's only 2 times in my life I can remember my mom crying. with my dad being gone, when I say being gone, working 70 hours a week and not always being there, she had to fix everything herself, figure things out for herself. She was a problem solver. But she was much more of a nurturer, and together it was the perfect balance to raise young men.
So you enlist, National Guard. How does becoming a Green Beret come about?
Becoming a Green Beret comes about. There's a longer podcast, so I get to go a little deeper. I normally say this happens when I get to my air defense unit and I realize they're not going to do anything. That's actually not completely true. You, in the National Guard, you go drill with your unit before you go to basic training. As soon as you sign your papers, your National Guard unit owns you, so to speak. And you go to drills, even though you don't have rank, and even though you didn't go to basic training, and you don't know what you're doing, you still have to show up to drills and be a part of that unit. And it's a good thing because they kind of teach you a little bit about the military culture and what you're about to get into, and they try to. It's a good thing. But even though I didn't know a lot, I'm starting to put two and two together that. Maybe this isn't the go-to-war unit that I was hoping for. Not saying the guys there were bad. The job itself wasn't directly applicable to the war on terror. It's air defense artillery. Not a lot of Taliban helicopters need to be shot down. I'm starting to realize this. So even in basic training, I started realizing that I wanted to go to Special Forces. That is actually when I realized I wanted to go to Special Forces, and that's when I wanted to be a Green Beret. But it was so far away that it wasn't something that I really talked about a whole lot or entertained a whole lot because there's nothing I could really do about it in basic training. It wasn't until I just had to get through basic training, I had to get through AIT. And AIT, Advanced Individual Training, was done at Fort Bliss, Texas, the armpit of America. That place. And when you thought it couldn't be any worse, like, man, we're basically living in Mexico. This border town is bad. And then you go into war as Mexico, and you feel like, oh no, still Mexico's still worse. Like it's never mind. I didn't know what I didn't know. I ended up having the highest GPA ever recorded in air defense artillery training at their AIT. Scored a perfect 300 PT test. Just crushed it. Was on my way to. Sounds bad. I don't know what better. On my way to proving that I'm better than the people around me. It's not the ideal way I would phrase it, but that is but it's not wrong. But which was good because I had higher expectations. So unless you can dominate here, I wouldn't worry about going, moving forward and advancing the military if you can't, if you're not a stud where you're at. So that was important to me to be number one, both, mentally and physically, be the strongest guy in my class, be the smartest guy in my class. Because I had aspirations of doing other things. If I couldn't prove it in ADA, then I might as well put that selection packet on hold. So that was important to me. And I don't think, which is a little bit unfair in some aspect, because I was in AIT with something to prove, motivating me to outscore everyone else. So I don't know what everyone else had other than just personal pride. But I had something like pushing me to say, hey, I have something to prove to myself. I get back to my unit. There is part of my unit that's getting back from an Afghanistan trip. I asked them a question that I pretty much told you I'd already figured out the answer to this question before, but now they're just doubling down on it, which is, hey, what'd you do in Afghanistan? Brent, what do you think we did in Afghanistan? We're air defense. We don't have a job in the war on terror. And when you don't have a job in the military, in combat, what do you do? And I said, I don't know. I knew what we weren't doing, but I didn't know what we were doing. And they said, we guard gates. That's what we do. And That was not the answer that I wanted. I didn't leave my family business to go guard gates in Afghanistan, and my worst fears were now coming true. And that was really what, started the fire to. I knew I wanted to leave here. Yeah, I thought I wanted to leave here before this. Now I know I've got to leave here. I asked him, well, hey, so if we're not doing anything cool, you've been there, you can at least tell me who was doing cool stuff. They would tell, stories about Green Berets coming in from the wire, covered with blood, big beards, being disrespectful to them, not like in a shitty way, but like, I need your ID, Sergeant, to get in the gate, and then be like, fuck you, just open the gate. I'm tired. And yes, to some people those are gonna sound like assholes, but to me, I was like, kind of sounded like this doesn't sound like men. It sound like Vikings. It sound like people who are doing their job and now don't care about your little rules because they have more important things to worry about. And it really attracted me. Even those stories. I don't even know how true those stories to this day. I don't know how true those stories even were, but they were true to me at the time. And I said, you know what? That's what I thought I wanted to be. Now I know that's what I want to be. I need to find these mythical Green Berets. And as a National Guard air defender, I might as well have been looking for a Delta Force guy at the time. I was so far removed for being able. No one in my unit could be like, oh, do you know a Green Beret? Can you call him for me? Nobody knows those guys. And I heard all sorts of bad intel from, what they call them, shithouse lawyers. Like, well, the only way you could be, 20th Group, is a National Guard Green Beret unit, but the only way you could be a Green Beret is you had to be active duty first. And so you can't go straight from National Guard there. You had to be active duty first. Which is a lie. But as you get into this, you start uncovering there are some truths to what they were saying. They just misunderstood it. You have to go to active duty selection. You have to go to the active duty Q course. You have to do all the active duty requirements, but you can absolutely do that. And there are plenty of active duty Green Berets that get out of the active military and go to the National Guard. So they weren't completely wrong, but they were far from right. And other things like you have to be an E5 to be a Green Beret. You're not even a special. I was an E3 at the time. So you can't even talk to them. You can't even talk to a recruiter. Again, partial truth. An E5 is the lowest rank you can be on an ODA. You will be an E5 regardless of how how little time you spent in the military. But the Q course is a long Q course, and you will. That's not a requirement, but beforehand. So just a lot of digging through misinformation, trying to figure out what's right, trying to figure out what's not right, still trying to figure out. How do you even get a hold to talk to one of these people to get the information straight from them? It was we talked about a little bit before. You had to do your own research, and even then, when Google was at least a thing, but it wasn't as big as wasn't as easy to get a hold of. That Google continues to populate every year and every year and every year. It wasn't something that was easily looked up in 2001, but we did have something called AKO, which is the Army Knowledge Online. It was a portal as a soldier that all your emails, like your official emails, would come through. And they also happened to have a white pages where you could search for people in the military. And I did a search and looked up Special Forces. I saw a 20th Group. I vaguely remember it, but I remember seeing a phone number to a 20th Group, and it was in Ocala, Florida, which is only a couple hours away from me. So I said, I found him. I'm going to cold call him. Private Tucker on the cold call to the Green Berets. That's, it is kind of funny now. But that's, I would not take no for an answer. No one was giving me the answers I wanted, and I wanted the answers. So Private Tucker calls the Green Berets in Ocala, and a recruiter actually picks up the phone Kurt Carey is his name. And Kurt Carey answers the phone, and I talked to him for a little bit. And Kurt Carey couldn't be any less interested in Private Tucker. At the time, they're actually deploying, and they had, they had other things of sorts to worry about. I was a private. My air defense unit was also deploying. We were supposed to deploy for the invasion of Iraq, and we were going to Fort Bliss to do a spin up to do it. It's been a long time. I believe, if I remember right, Kurt Carey, the recruiter, knew that and said, hey, I don't want to muddy up the water. Your unit's deploying. Deploy with your unit. We're not going anywhere. Come back when you're a specialist, and come back when you're done with that, with your obligation to your unit. Something along those lines. Well, we spin up. We go to Fort Bliss. We mobilize. We watch the invasion that we're supposed to be on happen on the TV screen at the DFAC, and now they're like, well, how dare they invade without us? You missed your all-star team still sitting here at Fort Bliss. That was a dangerous move going in without us. But once again, I realized this is just they'll get invaded. They invaded without us. They could care so less about us. We're not a necessity here. We demobilized, and as soon as we did demobilize, probably the next day, I called Kurt Carey right back. I said, I did get promoted while I was over there. I said, hey, I'm Specialist Tucker now, and we got demobilized. Will you please, for the love of God, let me come talk to you guys. I've got to get out of here. This is what I want to do. They decide to bring me over and give me an assessment to see if they're going to do a transfer from my National Guard unit to the Special Forces unit. So I show up, and the only way that I know how to show up, which is to be impressive as a soldier and to show up with starched uniform and high gloss boots, highly polished boots, and a good haircut. And I show up there for my testing day. It was a PT test, some pull-ups, a swim test, and a ruck that me and like 7 or 8 other people who were interested in joining had to all take. And I walked in about 3 steps, and the sergeant major there, he was a master sergeant at the time, who was a Green Beret, Dan Kinkle, great man, great Green Beret, mentor, someone I looked up to highly, looks at me for about 3 seconds and said, what are you doing? You look ridiculous. Go get changed. Is that all you brought? Is that what you're going to ruck in? Like, he's just overwhelming me with questions about what am I thinking, and I couldn't have felt any dumber. In hindsight, that's exactly how I'd still tell someone to show up. You don't show up in dirt baggy, assuming that you already got it. Why would you ever show up in a baseball hat and and a crap uniform, going like, yeah, I haven't proven anything, but I'm gonna look the part. That was still the right thing to do, and I'd rather them tell me to look less professional than ask me what the hell was I thinking and to get in a decent uniform. So we did that. I performed well, and they said, we'll take you on, because they only get a limited number of selection spots to send. So they basically kind of run their own little selection and say, okay, like these people seriously have a good shot at selection. And then they transfer you to the unit, and then you go to selection. Okay. So I went through that process, went to selection through 20th Group. Found out at that time a new program had started called SOPC, Special Operations Preparation Course, which is a pre-selection. It was, if I remember right, only 10 days long. It was 2 weeks. It may have been 3 weeks. Can't remember, but you had weekends off. And what sounded pretty, of sorts, easy, was horrible. It was worse. It was worse than selection. Those 5 days in a row they had you, they'd wake you up in the middle of the night, keep you up all night, ruck you in the middle of the night, ruck you all day, run you at night, run you during the day. They had this mud pit called the gig pit. They'd put you in this mud pit, and they'd have you sloshing around in it for an hour. And mind you, this is after sometimes you're doing land nav, and you're in the land, and you're doing land nav, getting scrapes and cuts and pushing, breaking all this brush, and then you have all these exposed wounds. But these cuts, and then to hop in this dirty, muddy water, guys would get infections all the time from that. Some pretty bad infections. Eventually, they looked into SOPC, and they really changed the way they did it because of some of the questionable tactics they had there at SOPC. They would cold February morning. They'd rucksack on your back. When you're rucking or land naving, dry feet is everything. Once your feet get wet, you get a blister. Once you get a blister, there's no time to recover from that. Blisters only get worse. So taking care of your feet is everything. Before land nav started, they just march us out into the lake, rucks on our back, chest deep water, freezing, and be like, hey, someone in here is going to quit. And when someone quits, that's when we'll begin training. Mm-hmm. And they just sit there and they just watch us turn on each other. Hey, Travis, you're the last in everything we do. Get out of the lake. If you're not a quitter, you're definitely not going to make it. Get out of the lake. And then Travis would be like, what about Joe? Joe may be faster than me, but he can't find half his land nav points. He's right. Joe, get out of the lake. And we're just turning on each other. It's just, it was horrible. And even though I said all that as if I'm like, you would think I'm shedding light on this thing and telling like this is not the way it should be done, the men they ended up with in that class were men. And they went on to do amazing things. We didn't know at the time we had 20 years of war. We needed America's best. And they found America's best. And that was their job, was to find America's best. Those Green Beret instructors had teammates that they knew were trusting them to give them a good product because they're going to war. We didn't know for how long, but we knew we were still at war and would be, and that this class would be at war. They did their job. I'm not mad at them one bit. I don't question what they did one bit. I do hate the fact that some guys did get some like infections in the gig pit, and that that was. They probably rolled over a class. Hopefully they got to come back, and that wasn't their one shot, at selection. Those type of things suck, but I don't get wrapped around that. SOPC sucked. It was also exactly what I expected. I wanted to be tried. I wanted to be done with something and be like, I earned that. That was what I was hoping it would be. Had it been easy, I'd have been very disappointed. I'd have been a little bit pissed. I wanted a challenge. I got a challenge. Careful what you ask for. After SOPC, the way that is, you go to selection. SOPC was so difficult and such a high standard. Selection, not saying selection was easy. Man, selection had its very difficult moments. But if you could pass SOPC, you had the confidence knowing that you can pass anything. And so you showed up to selection, pretty confident that if you just made it through the day, you would see tomorrow and that you were good enough land nav-wise to make the land nav course. You were strong enough to get through any team event, rifle event, log PT. You've proven that. And that you're mentally tough to never quit. So going through SOPC was great. Selection to me was only a matter of time. I performed at selection. I did well. The trek is still, I think everything that SOPC can't really duplicate because of the logistics. The trek's a 48-hour, 50-plus mile event that you move as a team, and you have team events every 5-10 miles. And you have a down pilot, you have 6 pipes, you have this piece of fabric. It's always a problem. You have to move this guy for the next 5-10 clicks until we say stop. Go. And you did that. You did that with a down pilot. You did that with a a telephone pole, 4 tires, and 2 pipes and some lashing. It's just a whole bunch of team building, sometimes team breaking down events that and that involve problem solving and teamwork. And in between those, you're just moving as a team for just miles and miles and miles on end. The trek sucked. And I wasn't part of a smart team. And I'm the blame for that. It's not like I figured it all out and was like, hey, we're doing it all wrong. We turned a telephone pole, which should have been a pipe axle and tires that rolled, and we turned that thing into a plow. And we plowed the tires, dug in sideways and locked in, and it was literally a plow and sugar sand, and we plowed for 10K. And the instructor, I remember the instructor looking at us with pity and being like, you guys are stupid because this is such an easy, that if you guys would just stop. And he would ask us, guys, stop, because at some point we gave everything we had. Like, guys were falling out. Like, this whole team may not pass selection because if we don't do something smarter, we physically can't drag this thing as a plow for this long. This is like towards the second half of the trek anyway. We're done. And he would ask us, guys, just stop. Stop. Redo whatever it is you think you got going on here. I'll give you 10 minutes. And we would redo it in just a different, really messed up way than we had it. And it would turn right back into a plow. I remember him looking at us like, man, you guys are impressively hard and impressively stupid. We eventually plowed that thing, but we never figured it out. And then when we were done, you could tell this instructor couldn't wait for this moment. And he goes, do you guys want me to show you what you could have done? And he did, and it was painful. It was painful. We all looked at each other like, how did you get this many idiots in one team? And I was part of that team.
You need knuckle draggers too, don't you?
Oh, do you? Oh, do you need knuckle draggers? And that's what, in fact, one of my best friends that ended up through the Q course, I kept in touch with him in group, and we have lunch whenever he comes into town to this day. Darren Beheeler was on that trek team with me, and our friendship started there.
Made in misery.
Made in misery. Forged in misery. So speaking of my dad, I get notified that you're a first-time go at selection, which was a huge relief. When you're in 20th group and you're waiting to go selection, the good thing and bad thing is that you have guys that have already been to selection that are in this program. They weren't selected, so they come back into this, what they call NQP, non-qualified personnel. So in one way, it's good. You get to ask people about selection before you go. I always kind of make this joke, but are those the type of people you want to ask about selection? Because they didn't make it. So you got to take their advice with a grain of salt. I knew this. I knew I didn't want to do anything twice. I know I didn't want to recycle. I'm in a hurry to get to war, and anything if I had to go to selection again, that means that just extends my hopes and dreams of going to war as a Green Beret, because I knew I was just going to keep going back until they told me no. So getting through selection getting through SOPC as a first-time go, meeting all those standards, getting through selection as a first-time go were huge to me. And when they told me they put us, you're a number at selection, I was 297. These are huge selection classes, by the way, because of all this influx of people joining the military and doing the 18 X-ray program, which is you could go straight from the streets straight into SF. We had 450 man selection classes, massive classes, and massive dropout rates. And when the numbers got called to the side here, which is a pretty small number, and then the other group over there got called, you're already kind of thinking, well, this is a small number. This should be the selected number. I hope this is the selected number. Or else I'm just really unlucky. Plus, you're looking at people in the other group going, I've seen you for the last month now. I don't think you were better than me. they march you around the side like, congratulations, this group is selected. And first thing I did was I got my personal belongings back, and I had my cell phone and my personal belongings. And as soon as I was able to make a phone call, I called my dad, and I said, "Dad, I think your son's gonna be a Green Beret. I just got selected. Still got a long ways to go, but I think I'm gonna be a Green Beret." And my dad's just not a very emotional man. He just goes, "Proud of you, son." And that was it. That was all I wanted to hear. That's all I think any boy wants to hear. So now the work's just begun. The Q course is a long process and a massive beast.
Do you think your dad being that type of man, do you think that drove you further in the military in your career?
100%. Had he coddled me, had he not instilled work ethic into me, more importantly, had he not instilled logic and reason into me, I would never have went as far as I did. It's 100% because of my dad. And to be honest with you, he didn't invest that much time in me. And that sounds horrible, again, but like he didn't. But the time he did invest into me, he made it count, and he's and he instilled something into me when he decided to put time in. And then when your dad decided, was finally going to come around and talk to you, you better listen up. Because my dad also walked the walk and talked the talk. So you couldn't outwork my dad, you couldn't outsmart my dad. So it's not like he's going to say things like, that's just that crazy guy. Like he had an essence about him that said, listen up. He's a successful businessman, at this point. Everything he ever says and does is right. You might want to listen to him.
So the Q course is next. Is that the Q course is basically, I think it's like a year and a half, and it just basically trains you up on how to do the job of being a Green Beret, correct?
The biggest, I think, for most junior or Green Berets going through, misconception is that when you graduate the Q course, you're going to be a badass and you're a Green Beret now. And it took years of being a Green Beret truly for me to appreciate what the Q course was. The Q course was a master of the basics. Now, SOPC and selection were both challenges and things I wanted them to be. I expected to come out as a Green Beret, when I donned that Green Beret, that I could put charges on doors, conduct hostage rescue, be a sniper, all the advanced things that you think about Green Berets. You think that's what, you think and hope that's what you'll have when you put that Green Beret on. But it's not. When you put that Green Beret on, you're the master of the basics. You then go to phase 2, which is essentially Ranger School. And you learn small unit tactics, the basics. And you learn how to plan a mission. And you learn the roles and responsibility of the Alpha team, the Bravo team, the team leader. You learn everyone's roles and responsibilities. You know how to plan. You know how to execute a raid, how to execute an ambush. All things that you have to be the master at, because you will be teaching this to indigenous forces later on. And if you don't know what you're talking about, you sure as hell can't teach it. So phase 2 was, again, the mastering of the basics, a necessity. Phase 3 was your personal, for me, 18 Echo was your individual skill. So I was a 18 Echo, which is a communication sergeant. So for me, I knew nothing about radios. They had to teach me everything about radios. They had to teach me about HF data. They had to teach me about SATCOM. They had to teach me about HF voice. They had to teach me about crypto. They had to teach me about antenna theory. They had to teach me about wave propagation. All these things from nothing. They had 4 months they had to teach me about computers and computer networking. And that was just barely enough to become the basics, the minimum of what you need, which was exactly what I ended up becoming. My first deployment, I was the only communication sergeant on my team. We had a special forces team out in the middle of Afghanistan who had no link back to the world via communication that wasn't run through except by me. I was an E5 Green Beret in combat, and there was only one person on that team that knew how to make commo. You're supposed to have two ODAs, two commo, two of everything as a redundant system as a Green Beret. I wasn't even the senior as the only. I mean, I was the senior commo guy by default, but I was very much a junior commo guy. So that knowing the basics, we did an exercise. We loaded up an airplane. You jump out into Oklahoma, and you go from point to point to point with 100-pound commo rack on your ruck on your back, and you're making commo shots back to Fort Bragg, simulating traveling places in the world and making commo was huge. It's called max gain. It's a final exercise. Not everyone completes it. The satellite communications is pretty easy because that works. But when it comes time for you to do your HF shots, you're talking about bouncing radio waves off the atmosphere down to Fort Bragg, hoping that it hits and that you did everything right. And there's it's called antennae theory for a reason. It's not really a science. Like, it's a theory. And when things aren't starting to work in this theory, you got to start getting proactive and getting into a problem solving. Say, well, what do I do different with my antenna? And truly, at the end of the day, being a problem solver is what makes you a good special operation asset. And people that were problem solvers, got through these courses. When things are going wrong, how do I assess properly what's going wrong? Then how do I creatively do something different other than I'm doing now to get the achieved result, even though I don't know what it is? That characteristic was something I had. I don't know how it's not really something you can train. It's something that you assess for. It's something that I think my dad instilled into me as a kid and throughout the years. So after phase 3, you're a commo guy. But now you have small unit tactics, you have commo skills, and now you go to phase 4, which is Robin Sage, which is your guerrilla warfare exercise. And now this is a much cooler part of the Q course. You actually get to get creative, do mission planning. You get put into this fake guerrilla force, and you're in this fake war, and you can get creative. Like whatever you decide that you and your training Green Beret want to do, they'll let you do. So you get to do some pretty cool stuff. For the first time, now you're a commo guy, but now another student that was just graduated the medic course is now on your team, and the guy who graduated the weapons course is on your team. The guy who graduated the demo course is on your team. And for the first time, you actually get a really good sense of what all these guys can do that have mastered the basics, but have these really advanced special skills can do. And every problem that you come across and come up with, someone on your team has at least the training now to do something about it. So Robin Sage was a really cool exercise, but to be honest with you, it wasn't that challenging, and now that you're done, and now you get a Green Beret because you're done with Robin Sage. The only 2 courses you have left is language school. Every Green Beret has to know a different language, and you have SERE training. And now you have your long tab. You have a Special Forces tab and a Green Beret, and I have no idea how to shoot a sniper weapon. I have really no idea how to effectively clear a house. Like the way I know I'm the master at conducting a raider ambush is how I wanted to know how to do the cool, sexy stuff like room clearing, CQB. They don't touch on that. That's an advanced school you go to when you get to your team. So FOWIC. Then you go to sniper training, once you're on your team, if you want to. You go to SODIC. You go to all these advanced schools. You go to level 2 for human. Eventually, you do become that operational asset that you wanted to be as a Green Beret. But it's not the Q course's job to make you that. It's the Q course's job to make you a bare minimum master of the basics, can hold your own for your specialty, and you'll learn everything else when you get to your team. I think that was a big, rude awakening, almost. But you just have to wait, see the process out. There's a reason. There's a method of the madness.
So you mentioned SERE school. Did you go to a different SERE school when you got to the unit?
I did. I was lucky enough to go to 2 different SERE schools.
Lucky is an interesting word to use for that.
What a joy. Yeah. So the SERE you go to is a Green Beret. It's part of the Q course. Every Green Beret has to go through it. Is SERE level C. And the different levels, the SERE A, B, and C, basically to generally, unless there's a SERE instructor out there, I'm sure there's one in the comments that'll tell me where I was wrong. Generally, this is true. The higher the level of SERE, SERE C being the highest level of SERE, allows how long you can withhold food from them, how physical you can be with them, how long you can keep them awake. So SERE C basically means there's not much they can't do to you that they don't want to. It was at this point to the Q course, like I told you, I was a little bit underwhelmed. Is harsh, but it didn't exactly meet my expectations. So I go to SERE school now a little bit with this mindset, and I was wrong. I do remember talking to some of my friends that were ahead of me, had just graduated SERE, and like, hey, like, are some of these stories they hear like breaking fingers and knocking you out and punching you, and like how bad can they torture you? Like, well, they're like, all that's not true. They can't break your fingers, and they can only open hand hit you. They can't punch you. And I remember going, oh really? That's what I've asked. And I'm thinking again, something didn't meet my expectations. You're gonna slap me and think I'm gonna break? So I go into SERE school, and we're finally going to Camp Slappy, which is the end of SERE school.
Camp Slappy.
And we're done evading. Everyone that's evading, whether you successfully evade or not, like you eventually get put on a truck. You don't know it, but you kind of have a sense that, like, generally speaking, SERE is only so many days long. The last 3 or 4 days, I'm going to spend in a camp. So you kind of know this time when I get on a truck that's supposed to move me from one part to the next, it's probably going to end up at SERE school and not at my next rendezvous location. So I can hear the gunfire outside the truck. I'm like, yeah, all right. I knew this was coming. They pull me out and they ask, like, hey, what's name and social security number? And sign here. Whatever they're asking me to do. And then I was basically, no, and I ain't going to give that to you. And he goes, are you sure? I'm not going to give that to you. And this 6'6" black man that was probably 230, 40 pounds, he's a large man, slaps me with an open hand that might as well have been a closed hand. And it rocked me. It rocked me. And I remember going, I underestimated that. That slap really hurt. And then he goes, you want to give me the information now? But not enough to break me. I said, no, sir. I'm not going to give you that information. And he slaps me again in the same exact spot. Here's something else as a man. You probably know this as well. You ever been slapped in the same spot twice in your face? Probably not. It's a weird thing to ever have happened to you. Maybe you've had an abusive girlfriend. That's a story for another time. I have not. The first one hurt. The second one felt worse than the first one. And by the time he hit me the third and the fourth time in my face, I said, where do you want me to sign? I've underestimated this whole experience. Where do you want me to sign? And I sure yourself signed. And there are other times where guys will think that, hey, you can't break me with slapping. And they're super creative. And they'll just go pick your friend. And they'll just slap on your friend and tell you, this is because of you. And they'll just keep slapping your friend. And your friend eventually is going to look up at you like, why are you doing this to me? Yeah. Why? Yeah, you are doing this to me. And you can take a slap, all day and all night, but you're the end of the Q course. Those are all your best friends around you. they're creative. They'll find a way to break you. But more importantly, what SERE was really, really good about, SERE was amazing. SERE really, you want to find out what you're made of, what you're really made of, like, go to SERE. Like, you think you'll never break? I got slapped a couple times, and I signed a paper. You think you'll never break? It's just slaps. Have your friend get slapped 30 times in front of you and start bleeding from the mouth and be like, oh, maybe not. You don't think you'll break? Have them wheel out an American flag in front of you. Tell them to burn your own American flag. And if not, they're going to take your best friend in 30-degree weather, and they're just going to keep spraying him with cold water while he's shaking so hard it looks like he's about to pull a muscle. And you can make it all stop by just burning your flag. I mean, you're talking about some serious mind games. They'll break you. And all for the best reasons. And all for the best reasons. I talk about, I'll talk about this later. Again, I'm a huge advocate, and I talked to you about this, about reading books. Reading books and putting yourself in situations before you're in those situations. I don't care if it's self-defense. I don't care if it's a combat reconnaissance mission. I don't care if it's POW. You need to put yourself in those situations before you're in them, because you're not going to make the best decisions on a snap, on a snap decision when you're in the middle of the toughest time of your life. Part of the problem with that kind of scenario is, well, how am I supposed to imagine a situation that I've never been in? Well, that's where reading books comes in. Those guys were in those situations, and hopefully they're writing a book now to tell you what they would have done different. Or they'll tell you, what a scenario looks like in that situation through writing the book, and you actually do have enough information now to make a decision. What they're telling you is, you'll die for that flag. Sure, you'll die for that flag. Do you want to go home and see your family? Is you burning that flag under duress, being made to burn that flag, is that worth losing your life for? I got 4 kids. You got any kids? You got your mom and dad. You're on a school trip to Russia. I don't know why you would be. And you get detained, and they say, hey, we also got your parents. We're going to kill your parents unless you burn this flag. That's a crazy situation to be in. 1, it's your country. But 2, at the end of the day, it's threads. Is that worth more than your parents' lives? At the end of the day, there's no right answer to it of sorts. What they want you to realize is, if you ever have to make this decision, at least you've thought about this decision and you knew it was worth you. What would be absolutely worse is to, 1, either scenario is horrible if you haven't thought it out. Burn the flag out of weakness, wish you never would have burned the flag and have to live with it the rest of your life. Or 2, just as bad, say you'll die for that flag, die for it, and then, as if you could, maybe right before you die, you go, you know what, maybe this wasn't worth it. I sure wish I'd have seen my kids one more time. This wasn't worth it. It was a great eye-opener into what are you really putting on the line here. And they'll tell you, at the end of the day, it's your decision. What they really want you to consider and think about is, this flag that we'll die for, we'll die for it we'll die for the idea of this flag. We'll die for that flag on your shoulder. If you're in a prisoner of war camp, you survive to go home. And that flag you burned under duress that they're going to broadcast to the world, they're going to forgive you for it. You were made to do that. No one's going to think you hate your country now. And I agree with that. I hope, that being said, this decision, I'm so glad that's a decision I never had to make. But SERE School was legit. I really loved it. It really showed you who you were as a person, and was really eye-opening into some of the horrors of war and some of the decisions like you may have to make. And I think part of that training and part of that, I'm not saying special operations guys don't have PTSD, but such a powerful tool in preventing PTSD is telling you, hey, something bad may happen to you, and you might want to go ahead and deal with it now. Because if you don't want to imagine the fact, deal with the fact that you have a dangerous job and that bad things are going to happen, when those bad things happen, it kind of breaks the mold of your mind. It makes your mind go, I never imagined I'd ever see this. And it does. It breaks your mind. Through the Q course and through SERE, through the Q course, the whole time when you're, in SUT and you're carrying a fake casualty of your teammate and trying to run to a helicopter that's actually sitting right there, and instructor's yelling at you, get him to the helicopter, get him to the helicopter. If you don't get him to the helicopter, he's going to die. Get him to the helicopter. And then, of course, it's training, so the helicopter takes off. Even though you made it there in time magically got faster. Helicopter takes off right in front of you, and your instructor says you were too slow. Now he's dead, and you're going to carry him all the way back to base. And this is what happens when you don't meet the standard of combat. People die. And let me tell you, when I carried Chris Robinson's body to a helicopter, it didn't break my mind. I didn't go, I never thought I'd carry a friend's dead body. I thought, this is exactly what they told me was going to happen. Yeah. This is what I thought it'd feel like. It's what they told me was going to happen. So going through that type of training is important to not just toughen the body and to learn experience, but to toughen the mind as well, to be prepared. Again, little did what we know was about to be the most extensive period of combat America's ever seen.
Man, that's fascinating with SERE. Number one, I guess just for some context, because we didn't cover it. It's a school that they put you through when you're in special operations or a pilot, somebody that's more susceptible to being a prisoner of war.
Yes, at the time that SERE, again, old information, that time was only open to Green Berets and 160th pilots and crew members.
Okay,
were the only people there. As always, I'm sure there was maybe a couple other exceptions, but generally speaking, that's what CRC was created for.
Yeah, so the mind games, I thought it was mostly just sort of a physical beatdown, but the mind games is fascinating. But so yeah, jumping ahead, because I want to talk about something that you mentioned there. Your first combat deployment was Afghanistan in 2005, right after you get your Green Beret.
Yep.
And since you mentioned it, who was Chris? Who was he to you, and who was he as a man and as a soldier?
So, Chris Robinson, as already alluded to, I was the only commo guy on my team. And the weight of being a new, non-combat proven Green Beret to a team who's already been to Afghanistan, probably had a much better commo guy than me before this trip. And I felt the weight of us going to these valleys and deserts and mountain ranges in Afghanistan and not being able to make commo scared me. It did. It scared me. Chris was the battalion senior commo guy for 220, for 2nd Battalion 20th Group. And during the train up, he would put on these, every now and then he'd bring all the commo guys together and he'd give training or allow us to do commo exercises and just ensure that, training happened. That was his job. Well, I'd stay late after training. Like, Chris, the first time I met him, I'm an E5, it's my first trip. I'm the only commo guy on my team. Will you make sure that I don't fail my guys, basically? And Chris, he spent hours and hours and hours with me, just training, retraining, testing me, retesting me. At some point, like towards the end of it, he was like, Brent, you're good. You're better than all the, because you stay so late and you work so hard at it. You're a better commo guy than all these other guys who have been there before. He's like, quit, you got it. Like, I'll stay with you as long as you want, but I'm convinced you'll be okay. And I don't know, man. That's just what I wanted to hear. I don't know, but I don't think anything. To be honest with you, nothing was going to make me feel better until I went into combat, and I was in a valley 800 miles away from the siege of Sodif and making comms, and I did it over and over and over again. And to be honest with you, even that, you're only as good as the last thing. So When it came to commo, I was never satisfied or like, I got this. Commo always scared me. Because you can do everything right. You can do everything right and not make commo. Now I got more confidence in time. But at the end of the day, I shouldn't say it always scared me. I always respected commo and always knew that I had to do my due diligence before going out the door to ensure that even though things may go wrong, even when you do everything right, that if they went wrong, it wasn't because of me. And I think, one of the best, compliments, that I've got was when, guys would talk about me as a commo guy. And don't get me wrong, I was not the best nerd, and I didn't know a lot of things, but everyone will agree. But if you need to make commo, Brent, I'll take Brent anywhere. Brent will make commo. Brent knows his job, and that was always important to me. But Chris was a battalion commo guy. When I left for Afghanistan and we went to go do our ODA's work, Chris was in, he was in Bagram. And so I never expected to see Chris again until the end of the deployment, because he was at a headquarters element. We're in Kandahar, and we're working directly with a 7th Group battalion down south, which was great. That was the hot spot in Afghanistan back then. It's where I wanted to be. Again, careful what you wish for. We were going to ramp ceremonies on a weekly basis, sending Green Berets home in body bags. And some of them were my Q course buddies. Some of them were my dive course. I went to dive school between the Q course and this. One of them was a buddy of mine from dive school. And even though I may not have gone to their ramp ceremony at the Chow Hall, there would be a rotating picture of everyone who's died in Afghanistan to this point. And you just sit there and watch the TV screen. And sometimes you're like, oh, I won the Q course for that guy. When did he die? I didn't even know he was dead. Like it got real. It got real. But we're going on this mission. There was a 20th Group team was going to go in and take out this HVT by ground. That was their job of the mission, was to come in and, in fact, I should misspoke, not take them out, not consolidate. Blocking positions. Their job was blocking positions and make sure no one came in, no one came out. And then my ODA and another ODA, 7th Group ODA, were going to come in and Chinooks, and we were going to assault the HVT's compound.
And HVT is
high value target. Yep. Things didn't go as planned. Bad weather came in, and we were using conventional Chinooks, and conventional Chinooks couldn't fly in the low loom night that we were looking to fly. They didn't have only the 1/60th can fly in that low loom night. So we pushed it right. The problem was they briefed that mission to ISAF and said, "Hey, this is a big mission. SF has going on." Well, ISAF has certain countries in there that we don't share everything to, and I'm going to screw up this game of telephone. But we eventually found out what happened. They knew we were coming, and they traced it back from that ISAF meeting. Had this country in it. This country talks to that country. That country talks to that country. That country has relationships with the Taliban. Within 24 hours, the game of telephone went on, and had they know that we knew we were coming, they told us. We listened to them talking about it. And now it rolled over 24 hours, and we're getting ready to come in, and we're getting updates saying, "Hey, I don't know how they know this, but they know we're coming." And for some reason, we still launched. and we still launched. And the 20th Group team that was there as blocking positions got into a nasty firefight as soon as they arrived in their blocking positions. I didn't know this, but the commo guy had gone home on leave, and Chris came to that ODA to fill in for the commo position while he was gone. So I had no idea that basically my commo mentor was down the ground in a turret. I saw it. We were circling helicopters waiting to land, and saw just a nasty firefight going down. Like, man, those boys are getting it. I didn't know that was Chris down there fighting for his life. He takes a round to the side, through and through, rips him out of the turret. The type of gunshot wound that could have happened on an ER operating table, and you weren't going to save him. Chris dies immediately, and now the assault force is turned from to an assault force to a collection force, a rescue force. We're told a Green Beret was down. We need to go down there and get him. We go out there to recover it, and as I'm carrying him back, I'm like, "That's Chris. What is Chris doing?" Blew my mind. Remember I was told you, hey, the worst thing that can happen is to have your mind rattle, not be prepared for it. Like it wasn't that someone died. It was the, why was Chris here? Chris didn't belong here. What was Chris doing here? Like, it shook me, and it ended up being such a nasty firefight, and they were so well fortified. That was the only time we landed. We collected the body. We circled around a couple more times, and the pilot said, "There's no way we can insert you guys. Like, there's just no way to do it." And so we flew back to Kandahar, and felt like a massive, felt like a failure. Felt like we got, we as Green Berets got kicked off a target, lost one of our own, and no one paid the price for it. Like I don't think anyone talked the whole helicopter ride back. We all went back to cleaning weapons and cleaning everything and getting ready to go in case, and the hope that we're gonna go again here in just a little bit, and to redeem this. Everyone's getting back ready. No one says a word. Everyone felt the weight of that. And just have a lot of good stories. I wish they were all good, but that's some of the reality of war that we don't always win. The good guys don't always win, and Chris didn't do anything wrong, but you play in a dangerous game, and the enemy still gets a vote, and the enemy still gets lucky every now and again, or the enemy's good. A little bit of both. Sometimes the enemy good, and sometimes the enemy's lucky, but it doesn't matter how it hits. Either way, the result's the same.
So how did you, that was your first loss of a teammate.
Yeah.
How did you process losing teammates, or that first one, and then, later throughout your career?
People may not like the sound of this, may not sound great, but it works for me, and I think this is how most guys who successfully navigate this profession emotionally do it. You don't think about it, and I don't care what psychiatrist is out there and it's like, "Oh no, you got to deal with your feelings. You need to talk about it. You're just a ticking time bomb if you don't talk about it." No, you don't. You don't deal with it. That's probably the wrong way to say it. I deal with it for about 24 hours. I don't do anything or say anything. I don't overly talk about it. If I don't have to in front of teammates, maybe we'll tell some funny stories. Maybe we'll take a couple drinks over it. If I can help it, I'll wait till I go to the shower by myself, and I'll cry like a little baby. I'll pull myself together, and I'll go right back in front of the men like it never happened. And the next day, you can't lament over it forever. He's gone. You can't change it. The only thing I can do is get home to my own family. The only thing I can do is make sure my teammates get home to their family. From then on, he's gone. Get your gear ready. Be better prepared. Make sure that never happens again. Go hit the gym a little harder. Make sure that you're never the weak link. Like that's how you cope with it. Like, and I'll go ahead and talk about it now. I think we've done a horrible job of dealing with PTSD and mental health, and it's because we've misdiagnosed it. We were losing 22 people a day to suicide. Yet we've cared more about suicide and we've cared more about mental health than ever, and it's in its worst condition than it's ever been. How can that be? And that's an honest question. How can that be? The only way that can be is if we're not properly applying if we're not putting forth the proper solution, it'll give you the same bad results. So we must be doing something wrong. And their answer to the solution was more safety briefs, more suicide prevention briefs. Talk to therapists more. Let's get you more access to therapists. I'll talk about this unapologetically here. Let me tell you what's crazy about a therapist. I've used this analogy before. Let's say you're a swimmer, and you want to learn to be the best swimmer. And this person comes like, I'm going to teach you how to be the best swimmer. I can teach you about swimming. I can help you be better at swimming. It's my degree. It's my profession. This is what you should do. And I looked at you and said, have you never swam in the pool? Have you never experienced what it's like to swim? No, but I went to college for swimming, and I have a college degree in the theories of swimming. Listen to me, I'll make you a better swimmer. Would anyone listen to that, coach? Take swimming out of it. Take anything, shooting, football, swimming, gymnastics. I don't care, hacky sack. Yeah, I don't care what it is. But when it comes to mental health, when it comes to the most fragile part of the people who have given the most and seen the most and they're hurting, they're going to tell you what it's like to experience trauma. Who've never experienced trauma. They're going to tell you how to deal with life and death situations who've never dealt with a life and death situation. So when I tell you how I deal with it and how I've successfully dealt with it, I don't know, maybe I'm more of a subject matter expert than a therapist. And you can cut that into a short and make it sound really bad, but argue with me logically and reasonably why I'm wrong. And here's another thing people don't want to accept. So they're going to say, so Brent, so you just ignore it, go to work, and these suicides go away. No, the suicides aren't going away. Doesn't make it right, doesn't feel any better. Suicides are going to be a product of 20 years of war. And if a guy wants to commit suicide, he's going to commit suicide. And there's nothing you can do to stop him. And you don't like that answer, and I don't like that answer. But that's the answer we got. And the only people who have a chance at stopping him are his closest friends and his friends who should have picked up the phone and said, hey, how you doing today? My buddy Matt just committed suicide. He was a Marine Raider. He was an absolute hero, a dad, and a great man. And I didn't pick up the phone enough to call Matt and say, Matt, how you doing today? No therapist was going to save Matt. Only his friends were going to save him. And we didn't save him. But at the end of the day, Matt gets a vote. He's a grown man. And we tell funny stories about Matt. There's a lot of funny stories to be told about Matt. We talk about the good times of Matt and what a hero that guy was, because he was. And then we go back to work and we move forward with our lives. One of the best analogies someone ever told me is you only got two options in life, 6 foot forward or 6 foot under. There's only two options you got. So I'll choose 6 foot forward.
Thank you for sharing that about Chris and about Matt and
not. But before I'll say one. When it comes to suicides, one of the biggest factors in suicides is drugs and alcohol. Drugs, and people don't want to talk about that because they don't want to, they don't want to, talk about the dark side, of people's lives and personal lives, and I get that. I'm not calling anyone particular out and saying anyone particular suicide was because of this, but more times than not, drugs, would it be prescription drugs or alcohol or both, is involved. And let me tell you about the amount of times a year I get drunk. None if I can help it. I don't have more than 2 or 3 beers in any setting, any sitting that I have. Maybe it's a celebration where I let loose about it, but I never have enough where I lose capability to physically defend myself, to mentally evaluate a situation, 2 or 3, talk to the cops if I need be, to talk to the cops and tell them a situation was happening. 4, defend someone who needs defending. Like those are all things that, and I know it sounds a little Captain America like cliche. Call whatever you want. There's no reason as a grown man with responsibilities in his life to get wasted and drunk and think he can perform his manly duties the next day. And that's stop drinking and doing drugs.
I personally am right there with you on that policy, and people can make their own decisions. I don't want to knock what other people do, but what I can say, and I'm pretty sure is a fact, is that it doesn't help.
Funny you say that. I was a speaker at a conference, and the speaker before me was talking about he was nothing like me in some aspect. Like he was a great salesman. You can even call him a business weenie if you want. Like, but the way he spoke just had me listen to him. And he was speaking unapologetically, which that'll always grab my attention. And he could have spoke of all things to talk about. He started talking about how he carries himself in an airport, and how he one of the things he said was, hey, I don't drink alcohol at all. I don't go that far with it. But he goes, I don't drink alcohol at all. I don't want anyone to ever drink, see me drinking and assume, he drinks. So he stays far away from that perception, and that is fine. Don't get me wrong. Be on that side of it rather than the other side of it. And he said, but I do know this. I have plenty of friends who drink, and I have plenty of friends who have been in some really bad times in their life. And I don't know one friend in the history of ever told me the story. I said, you know what? Things weren't going good in life. Everything was just against me. I started drinking, and I started drinking heavily. And you know what? Things kind of started getting better. And the more I drank, the better things got. Said no one ever. Tell me one story where adding alcohol into a situation didn't make it worse. So it's insanity that we fall back to that. I understand it. I'm not saying I don't understand it. I understand it. I don't agree with it. And we have to be mentally strong as men to say no. And we have to have friends there that are willing to stand up to another friend and be like, no, this isn't how we're going to handle this. I'm coming over.
I don't think anybody could argue with that.
Yeah.
So going back to your first combat deployment in Afghanistan, in 2005, right?
Yep.
What was going on in Afghanistan at the time? What were you guys doing there?
One of the things that made that time so hectic and so such a dangerous time in Afghanistan is they decided to do something about the drug money that the poppy fields were generating. And that was a tough decision to make for hires. And I'll be the first one to I have no problem second guessing and questioning hire when they make a stupid decision. I also have no problem telling hires, hey, this is why you get paid the big bucks, and this is a hard decision to make. So essentially, they decided the British military is going to take care of the counter-drug side of the house, and the American military is going to take care of the counter-terrorism side of the house. Of course, that's never a completely clean-cut delineation between that, because the terrorism is so deeply embedded with the drug money, and it funds a lot of the terrorism. And there were a lot of farmers that grew poppy seeds or grew poppy plants that were not terrorists, but that's their cash crop. And yes, maybe they even were funding terrorists because the terrorists would come over and extort them for the money. But at the end of the day, they themselves and their family and that farm were not terrorists. When you come through and you burn their poppy fields and you replace it with, make it up, corn that gets a tenth of the money that poppy produces, and you were already a poor farmer, and now you don't have anything coming in, you've now turned that farmer into a terrorist, and you've turned that whole village into terrorists. And so it was, at the end of the day, I agreed with it. It was a hard answer. You know, us guys on the ground took the brunt of that, but you couldn't allow them to continue to fund themselves through the use of drug money. There just wasn't a good, sometimes it's just not a good answer. And so that really kicked things off during that time frame. That created a lot of terrorists that weren't terrorists and created a lot of animosity that wasn't there before. And there just was no good answer in that time frame. That was kind of a little bit of the shit show that we walked into. And that's part of the stuff, you know, you sign up for to carry out policy and deal with the brunt of that for the good or the bad. That was a tough time.
So your first mission was an eventful one. Can you tell that story?
Oh man, if they were all like my first one. It was a daytime raid, which was unique as well. It was a bad guy barbecue is basically what it was. An HVT that 7th Group had been going after for a while. He was at this barbecue, and then he invited all his bad guy friends to the barbecue. It was just a juicy target that we could have waited for nightfall to hit it, but all of his friends would have left that were also targets. It was just too much to have them all in one place, you know, and the battalion commander just couldn't turn it down. So he sent us on this daylight mission. Two ODAs, a minimal amount of Afghans with us, like maybe 4 or 5. I mean, almost no Afghans with us. It was pretty unique at the time as well. Load up on Chinooks, daylight raid. Quick planning, out the door. Such quick planning, to be honest with you, as a new Green Beret, I don't even feel like I understood a lot of the details of the plan. But I knew enough about the plan, which was helicopter should land here, main compound should be here, and that's all I worried about. And as we loaded up quickly, took off. I don't remember it being a very long Chinook ride. Remember us, you know, getting all the hand signals, 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 1 minute, 30 seconds. Yeah, it's coming in. And, you know, remember just being excited. Like, you know, if you think about it, this is 2005 now. I signed up 4 years ago. For 4 years, I'd wanted to be in combat. I'd wanted to do something against the war on terrorism, to, you know, tangible, to prove that you can't come to America and kill our people and not have people like me come to your country and do something about it. And then, you know, went through air defense, that mistake, what do you want to call it, a mistake or not, that path. And then, you know, go through the Q course, which is a long time. Ended up going to South America real quick, go to dive school. I'm finally in combat. It's been a long time coming. I have waited for this moment for a very long time. I'm just excited. I don't know what to expect. I've read a lot of books, but at the end of the day, I don't know what to personally expect. I remember looking out the little circular aquarium bubble window of the 47, trying to get an understanding of where we are in target. And we were where I thought we were, which means when I look out my side of the window, I should not see any buildings or the target. So I know that sounds a little weird to look out there and to hope to see nothing, but that would have meant I knew at least we landed in the right place, or I thought we landed in the right place. And, you know, that when I do come off this, I should look left, and we should be where the village is. and the main compound will be a big building at the very, very left edge of this village. So all this is kind of planned throughout the process of my thoughts. But as I'm looking out, I feel like I'm no veteran at this point, very much the opposite, but I feel like we're coming in hard. And I remember telling myself, this is just how fast we come in combat. He'll flare last second. And it's just, hey, we're coming in hard. And then we're talking like a couple, like 5-10 feet off the ground. I think there's no way he can flare. And I go from looking up, you always have these like cargo straps on the side of the Chinooks. I remember grabbing onto them and screaming at the top of my lungs, "Hold on!" Well, what the movies doesn't show you is helos are loud. God, helos are loud. No, the guy in front of me heard "hold on." Nobody else heard "on." Especially they get even louder as they pitch the blades and they're coming in, for landing. It creates even more noise. They're loud as can be. So the guy in front of me, Bill Gardner, my senior 18 Charlie, also heard me, and he holds on. And we're the only two guys that apparently are tracking this and holding on. And everyone else is getting ready to run off the ramp. And when we hit, and boy did we hit hard, we're the only ones that stayed on our feet. And even that almost ripped us off the cargo nut. And now we're landed, and and the bird's on the ground, rotors are going, the ramp is down, and me and Bill look, and there's Green Berets all over the floor in front of us, and just a clear pathway. Just me and him are the only ones standing. And even then, I was still an aggressive guy, and I said, "Go, go!" And I'm pushing him off, and we literally step on everyone's heads on the way out of the bird. And now me and Bill, we're the main element. Oh yeah, you talk about a dog chasing a car and catches. Like, what do we do? Like, if you'd asked me, you want to lead this thing out? I'd been like, hell yeah, I want to lead this thing out. And now that I get a chance to lead it out, I'm like, hold on, I'm running, and I'm trying to get my bearing. I'm looking left. It's the first time it really, especially in hindsight, it hits you that you can study the aerial photography all you want, and it definitely helps. You get better at it as you go, but nothing looks the same on the ground as it does in overhead and aerial photography. Like, it's just confusing. Luckily, this was a softball target for imagery, because it was a big 2-story compound on the very left side of the village that was supposed to be on our left. So that at least, all quickly came together for me. It was a lot further away than I thought it would be. Now, sometimes that's because the bird doesn't land where it's supposed to be, but I couldn't tell you if the bird landed where it's supposed to or not. It's a long time ago. I didn't even know enough to ask those questions or probably even be in the AER. But I do remember being, that's a lot further away than I thought we were going to land. And we're booking it. So we're booking it. Me and Bill show. Just two guys racing to the door. And I do remember seeing it. Like, it's still like the sound of the helo is still in the background, still kind of loud. We're just running, and within your peltors, everything, your breath, the pounding of your feet, your gear and your gun as you're running at 100% full sprint. You're everything about you is loud, and you're not trying to be quiet. You're trying to be fast. And I do remember seeing like little, like pieces of dirt just kind of jump up in the air around me, and going, "That's weird. Like, I wonder what that is." Like, these are only like split-second thoughts, and I do realize at some point I'm looking up, and you can start seeing some of the somewhere that this fire is coming from. And I remember they were getting shot at. I'm like, this is cool. I think we're getting shot at. Like, it's what I wanted. I wanted action. I'm getting action. Daylight raid, Chinook, multi-ODA, first off the bird, taking fire. And I'm like, yes, war. Me and you have met.
Yeah.
So
Your sweet embrace.
Your sweet embrace war. And about this time, the Apaches are starting to that were there to both protect the infill of the Chinooks and now protect the assault force. They're starting to make their gun runs and get their bearings, and they're making gun runs on buildings. But as we were running towards the building, this Chinook is making a gun run basically on the other side of the village, but towards us. Not normally what you want, but this is the chaos of war. Like, this is the truth. Like, you can want a gun run to go left or right, as I'm going straight all day long. The day you get the gun run you got, And if it would have taken them even longer to do a full turnaround to make a left and right, I wouldn't have wanted that. We wanted fire support. We wanted it right then. What was developing in front of us was what eventually was not just the bad guy compound giving us fire. The whole village decided to come out and say hi to us with their machine guns. We had taken a heavy volume of fire, and we needed those Apaches to start asking them to stop with good old American missiles. A couple of them, unfortunately, went high. And this is the problem with not making gun runs at a 90 degree, is that when it went high, the target, these rockets are coming straight at me and Bill. And I remember it, just like it was yesterday. It's almost like it almost looks like a video game, when you have like these missiles coming at you, and you start to think, man, those kind of coming at us. And you're running straight to the compound, you're looking up like those aren't coming at us, are they? And they get closer and closer and closer, and you and Bill basically dive out of the way for an Apache rocket to land in between you. And now, as you're both getting up and you look over your shoulder to see if each other's okay, and you're covered in dirt, and it's almost that cliche. It's almost that moment in 300. Remember, they're hiding behind the shields and they start laughing like, we'll fight in the shade. Me and Bill get in our feet, and now we're just laughing, running to the compound, because it's just crazy. Like, you can't imagine this. You can't think it up. Here we are taking fire. Now we almost got hit by our own rocket. Now we're covered in dirt. The guys just fell, on the helicopter behind us. It's just a circus, and enjoy the show. So we finally make it up to the compound. We're the first ones to the compound. By this time, that jump for life from the rocket gave some guys some time to catch up with us. Now we're all really running together. Make entry. There was some close quarter kills in that compound. Really cool to see. That sounds weird, but really cool to see that. You go through all this training, and now it's real to be 6-8 feet away from a armed insurgent with an AK that that has a chance to kill you as much as you do them. Like, it's fast, it's furious, it's raw, it's awesome. And, that was the taking down the compound happened pretty quick. At that point, we get told, "Hey, I want you guys to," because of, and ISR is watching it the whole time. And because of how lively the whole village got, the SOTF, the 7th Group Command, was like, hey, we want you guys to spend the night there. We want you to do a KLE, which is a key leader engagement. I want you to talk to that village tomorrow, and I want you to explain to them that this is not okay. And we will come back and do this all over again as many times as it takes. This is why we came here for this guy. And they were very aggressive. I really enjoyed working for that battalion commander. So they were more than happy to stay the whole night, stay up all night, and come tell all the elders later, if you want to keep going at it, we'll go at it. So part of staying up all night, we had AC-130 support, and all night, they did not like us there. We got reports all night long of 2, 3, 4 men crawling up to our positions. AC-130 would take them out. We'd go out there and do a BDA, a battle damage assessment of these dead bodies. Pull all their AKs off of them. Check for intel, come back to the compound, strong point that compound again, the same compound we just took down. Now we're spending the night in. And, an hour later, hey, there's several people in trees now. There's some trees around the compound. They're trying to crawl up these trees. Looks like they got some sniper weapons. Cleared hot. Hey guys, hold on. AC-130's firing. Give it a second. Boom, 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 boom. No one's moving. Okay, we'll go out there and check that dead body. Just all night, just going out there checking dead bodies all night, checking dead bodies. It keeps you awake. It keeps you. It's just like coffee.
Yeah.
And you did that all night. And to tell you, it was great to have the security blanket of the United States Air Force and an AC-130 Spectre gunship, and what it provides. Amazing technology, amazing crews, amazing capabilities. Kept us alive that night. Otherwise, things would have got really sporty that night. Wake up the next day, we start searching the rest of the village. We're running across dead people again, from the firefight the day before, dead women, dead, other dead males, old dead guys, young dead guys. But I do remember stopping, looking at the dead female. She's in late 20s, early 30s. And I do remember thinking to myself, man, I didn't come here to kill women, though. Like, I came here to experience combat. But that's the thing about combat. You don't get to pick and choose, who shoots at you. I didn't shoot at her, but it's not like I chose to not shoot at her. I don't remember seeing her, during the firefight. Obviously, someone else did. And I think Bill, same Bill that ran with me to the compound, I think is looking at me, kind of struggling with this, like, just staring at a dead woman. And he comes up and goes, "Hey, man, nothing. She voted. She's here supporting the men. They're all passing ammo, back and forth, and they use the women to do it. And she made her choice, and this is the decision that this is what the consequence of those choices. Don't look into it." And I took that advice, and that's solid advice. That's solid advice. And I don't want to harp on this even more, but some other mental health professional would probably tell you, we need to unpack this. We need to talk about this later, and then write an essay about it, and tell me how it made you feel at the time, and really dig into this. Or you could just say what the fact of the matter was. She's a female, sure, but she's a bad guy, acting like a bad guy, got bad guy results, case closed, moved on with your life. And that was some of the best advice I got as an early Green Beret with stuff like that. Because I'd see a lot more of it and a lot worse of it, later on. And we're not the monsters some media would portray us to be. The American military does not target innocent women and children. But combat has consequences and whether they were part of the badness or not, you can't completely separate innocent civilians from armed conflict, especially when your enemy likes to hide in hospitals and hide in mosques and hide in families' houses. It becomes very complex and intricate and intertwined real quick. So that was only the beginning of, something I would see, but Bill's absolutely right in the advice he gave me. We ended up finding a lot more RPGs, ammo, guns throughout that village. We'd only begun to scratch the surface of what they were willing or could bring to bear on us. So we took all that away from them. I was a junior guy at the time. I wasn't part of the KLE. I'm sure the 7th Group Commander, he was a company commander. That was a major that was in charge of the operation. I'm sure he had some choice words for the village elders at the time. We loaded up on Chinooks and we left. And that was my first taste of combat. And like I said, I was now under impression that is combat. And every time you load a helicopter, get ready for a wild ride. And the other truth of combat is I hit a lot of dry holes. I hit a lot of, we got the guy we were looking for a lot of times, and he just decided to give up, and lie about what he did for a living rather than fight. There was definitely more of those targets in the future, but that wasn't the norm.
So, a couple things to unpack there. I guess going back to your point about you guys don't get to decide who picks up a gun. And it's either you or your buddy on your right or your buddy on your left.
Right.
So when you think, and you said, things got worse, and I'm sure we'll get into this when we talk about your time in Syria with the unit and ISIS. But what comes to mind when you think about doing things that may have gone against your moral compass, and how did you navigate those situations?
Easy. I was never asked to do anything that went against my moral compass. The only thing the military tells you to do, or asks you to do, requires of you, is to conduct a target. But that's done at a high level. The military doesn't come down to you and be like, and you will come down here and kill women and kids while you clear this. They don't tell you that. They tell you to clear this objective. It is on the men of that unit to clear that objective in the way in which they see fit. So, hire doesn't get that granular with the planning. That happens at a lower unit level. So if people are doing things against their morals, or something that they didn't want to do, those type of commands or peer pressure is coming really from their peers or from the guys left right them. Ironically enough, the people you kind of have the most sway with and persuasion with, or could easily go above their head and say, "This is what this guy's asked me to do," and immediately get it taken care of. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you that it's never happened. And the American military is just an unblemished war machine. Unfortunately, there's been some things, but we were at war for 20 years. You don't think there's a couple bad apples, some guys that were in positions they shouldn't have been in? Of course, but I will say this: we are a virtuous, moral military as a whole. I can say that with full confidence, and no one that can legitimately argue that to me. And I know I've been there. I was there. I was on the ground. I was at the farthest tip of it. I know what the boys think and what the boys say and what it is they're capable of or want to do. American military is a good military, and if we weren't, gosh, I don't want to jump ahead, but we'll just call it contracting work. I've been in Ukraine. I've seen what an unmoral military does to innocent people and to villages. I've seen war crimes. We're at the very forward edge of combat operations of Ukraine and Russia, and I'm sort of pretty sure it was called Bucha. I traveled a lot in Ukraine. I don't remember all the cities. It ended up, now we had seen war crimes before, but I was really surprised that these war crimes actually made the news. And when we go back after this and Google it, you'll see it. I was the first on the scene. I was actually head of the Ukrainian military. And there's guys with their hands tied behind their back and bullet holes, like blatant, war crimes. Like, hey, if you're going to do, this doesn't sound good, but I'm just going to be honest with you. If you're going to do a war crime, at least cut his ropes off behind his hands and pick up the ropes with you on the way out. At least try to hide your war crimes, like it's insanity what the Russians did to the Ukrainians. The people that we were in contact with, and the kind of whole reason we were there, the girl didn't want to leave her basement that she was stuck in because any girl got caught walking outside their apartment or house would immediately get by the Russians as a norm. And I know someone will probably pull up some instance in 20 years where an American soldier, may have a girl. It was an isolated incident that team tried to hide from everyone. We're talking about a whole company of Russian soldiers doing it openly in front of all their commanders and getting zero pushback from it, and probably being encouraged, and probably them also enjoying those activities with them. So there was no pushback from their headquarters, fully knowing it's happening out in the open. That's an unmoral army. That's not the American military. I'm very proud of how the American military conducted themselves in 20 years of war. I am. I don't think that, as always, we should always look about what can we do better. We don't have time to sit there and pat ourselves on the back, but I do wish the American military would get more credit for how far we went out of our way to keep civilian casualties at its absolute lowest, when the truth is we didn't have to. We did because we're a moral military.
So do you remember, I don't know if it was on that operation or not, but do you remember the first time you personally engaged somebody?
Yeah, it was on that operation with the going up to that house as we were waiting on the stack to happen. That, like I said, that village was absolute, just opened up on us. That was a target-rich environment. There were plenty of people to pick and shoot at, and the first kill was a runner, in between two compounds. Tracked him, probably 50-meter shot. What an amazing shot, to be honest with you. But it's a mover, carrying ammo between. I couldn't have told you exactly at the time, but yeah, carrying ammo between positions is what he was doing.
What'd that feel like?
Didn't have time to think about it, at that time. It was really the nervousness and the nerves and being scared on missions. I'm not a robot. Like, I do get nervous before some missions. There's some missions I wasn't nervous before. I was like, it's just going to work tonight. There's some missions you just felt were gonna be worse than others. Once wheels touch down, you really don't have time to be nervous or scared or think about anything. You're just executing the plan. It's so you never really think about being scared or nervous. Honestly, on the objective. In the helo, yeah, we talk about that. Yeah, that could be a discussion. Once wheels hit the ground, it's just business.
So after your first OTC at the unit, you go back to your ODA or your Green Beret team to do one more deployment with those guys, which I've heard you say was one of the best of your career, to include your Delta Force deployments.
100%.
So what stands out from that deployment?
That was the team I had. Besides my first deployment, all my other SF deployments were with that team, and we'd been together for a little bit. We gelled well as an ODA. Everyone was of like mindset of, we're the dive team, we're better than you, and we'll prove it. Just a great group of guys that I still talk to this day. I go to their retirement ceremonies. We went and smoked cigars up in Jacksonville not too long ago. Just that type of unusual bond that just doesn't go away. So besides that team, now that we'd had a good time no matter where we went, but you add that team of high level performers, and to be honest with you, if I had to rank myself on that team, I went to the Delta Force from that team. I think I was the third best guy on that team. Now, don't get me wrong, I was more than willing to prove that I was the best on that team, and I'd have given them all a run for the money. But if you're asking me to honestly assess myself, I'm probably the third best guy on that team. Just a stacked team. And so besides having that team, we had the best team on the best mission. The commando mission is really what you wanted during that time frame. You got, helo assets, you got a quick strike force that was well trained. Your job was to really conduct two things: high value targets with those Afghan commandos, or to spearhead valley clearing operations. And those valley clearing operations, we're not talking about 1 week, 10 days long operations. You're talking about spearheading the beginning or the worst part of an operation that the conventional force would bring you in for and be like, hey, we want these meat shields ahead of us when it's the worst. And they're highly trained, and they have Green Beret assets that come with them. And it was a 72-hour clock that those commandos were on, and they would let you know and remind you that they're on a 72-hour clock. So that's really the most you could ever be out, was 72 hours. So you rarely missed meals and missed workouts. A lot of quick strike targets. It was great. It's a great. And in a great area. We're in the east, Sodif East, Jalalabad, Nangarhar, in the two N2KL, Logman. SEAL Team 6 got kicked out of Logman during that time frame because they lost a guy. Then they came in and did a kind of a heavy-handed operation after that, and they were told they were no longer allowed to operate in Logman. Well, Logman was a bad guy area, and that opened up the big boys can now no longer play in Logman. So it basically kind of left it to the JV team as the only player, the only game in town, and so that allowed us to hit strikes that we normally wouldn't have got. But now we're the only special operations element that's working in Logman. Mm. So it was just a lot of unique things that happened that just made for really a magical time. Sounds a little bit over the top, but made for a good time. Mm. Yeah, really. Operation Rockstar, was during that time. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but it developed me more as an operator. It gave me more experience. It gave me a little bit more. I was considered more of a leadership part of the team. They gave me a lot of leeway to help plan missions, to help mold missions, and mold what we wanted to do as a team. It was great. It was really good for me in general, especially seeing what I wanted to do. I really should have had a deployment like that before going to the unit. Mm. But as you said, I already went to OTC once. I didn't make it. I was lucky enough to be asked to come back. So I had to wait for my next chance at OTC, and that helped develop me as an operator and as a person to go back to the Delta Force the way I should have, really from the get-go. So yeah, it was very instrumental in my career, that deployment. And I wouldn't have got it had I just done what I've always been doing in my career, which is just first time go, everything, and be the best at everything and not really face adversity. It was really the first time I ever faced any adversity in my military where I did something wrong or wasn't the best at everything I did. I finally fell, and it felt like the worst thing that ever happened to me. I was that close to my dream of going to the Delta Force. I lost it. And, as we talked about earlier, when, you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans, he's probably laughing at me like, you have no idea. I'm setting you up for something bigger and better. You're going to go. I ended up going to a squadron that I wouldn't have gone to before. I ended up having my best deployment. My next OTC class, I made friends, were my best friends that I still talk to this day. Everything worked out the way it was supposed to work out. But I also handled adversity, generally speaking, like a man. Yes, I was depressed for, about a month or more, when it first happened. But at some point, I had to say, hey, this is now the life you have and the cards you've been dealt. You're just gonna drink and sleep on the couch all day? Like, get up, get over it, move on. And that's what I did. And I got my second shot.
Yeah, we'll definitely get there. So at what point do you decide to go to Delta Force selection?
I was in Iraq in 2008. Yep, I was in Iraq in 2008 with that team that I went up going to Afghanistan back with, that same dive team. Having a great time. That was a great deployment too. A lot of quick strike deployments. Iraq was good at that. Never missed a meal, never missed a workout. Yeah. Hey, it's the witching hour, 1 a.m., time to go hit a target, come back. Those were good times. Um, that was when I felt like I'd had enough experience that I felt that you put on the unit doesn't have a template to say, hey, we want you to have this many deployments. We want you to be this rank. We want you to have this many advanced schools. Those are all things you put on yourself. A lot of guys, in their mind, they say, however it is they get to that, this is the resume that I want to present to the unit that'll give me my best chance. So I'd been to dive school, I'd been to sniper school, I'd been to Afghanistan, I'd been to Iraq, I'd checked all the blocks, I feel like. And so I was like, you know what? Much like has been the mantra my whole since September 11th on, which is I don't want to live a life of regrets. If I feel like there's something I need to do, then I'm going to do it and have them tell me no rather than just me not do it and be like, well, I could have done it. And, I could have done it, if I wanted to. So I felt that calling, if you will, of just I basically got one more challenge left on my plate in the military, and that's to go there. I went to selection. I made it to the end, almost the end. I actually didn't make selection the first time. And so when I say OTC is my first failure, selection really is my first failure. But it was a little bit different. The OTC was my fault. And selection, I felt like was my fault. Like I knew what I had done wrong. But it was what it was. And I was asked if I was what my plans were, and at the very end of selection, and I got to tell the boss at the time, hey, you give me a chance to come back here and I'll crush this thing. Like it was good. You had a good course. I'm paraphrasing, of course, but you had a good. I said it very respectfully. You had a good course, but you let me back here, and I'm gonna crush it. And he did laugh a little bit, and he goes, "That's big words from a guy who just failed."
Kind of fair.
You would talk about being on a little bit high horse. Like you let me at it, and then him knocking you down with a little bit of logic and reason. Like, why would you what in your history would make you believe that? Seeing how you just lost,
Yeah.
And he probably did that intentionally to see how I'd react. And I was like, you know what? I tell you what. I think I know you guys, how often you guys run selection. I don't know. But if I'm right, you let me back here the very next selection. I'm not going. I'm not taking any time off. I'm not going to go lick my wounds. I'm not going to go. And I will be back here the next time these gates open, and I will train like an animal between now and then, and I'll prove it to you if you give me a chance. And that was almost verbatim. And he smirked a little bit and goes, see you next class. Later on, he tells me, he goes, you know what? He goes, you talked me into it. He goes, I wasn't going to give you the second chance. He goes, I thought about maybe giving you a chance the next selection. But if you were going to talk to me about, I'm going to go like a year from now, train up and come back, because you weren't getting another chance.
Mm.
So being aggressive paid off again for me. Being aggressive paid off for me a lot in my career. There's a night being aggressive did not pay off for me in my career. But hey, you take you take the good with the bad. You find out when too far is, and when you finally find too far, you back off a little bit. But he let me back in, and I did exactly what I told him I was going to do. And I had friends tell me, "Hey, you really shouldn't go back to selection. Like your body needs a break. You need a mental break. You need this. You need that." And I wasn't having it. Wasn't even listening to them. Like, no, I'll burn in. Then I'll burn in having a good time. Then I'll burn in. Then I'll work myself from the ground. And that's just the price you pay. And that's I was almost a man possessed. Honestly, like I got back. I took a week off, and it went right back to it. And I was in Florida at the time, and Florida's so hot, and I'm training up during the summer, and Florida's so hot, you can't do a 15, 20-mile ruck march and the heat of summer. Like, you will cramp up. So I had to train at night a lot. And I had a very set schedule of I would ruck Monday or Tuesday. And depending on how my body felt, either Monday or either Tuesday, I would ruck Thursday or Friday. That was depending on if I rucked Monday or Tuesday and how my body felt recovery-wise. But I was going to ruck twice a week during one of those, Monday and Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. The Monday, Tuesday was going to be a 4-mile ruck as fast as I possibly could. If I could run that whole 4 miles with my rucksack on, that's what I'd do. And then my second part of the week was always a long ruck, but never ran. That was just as fast as I could humanly walk, and for long distances. And I did that week in, week out, week in, week out. Besides rucking, I would lift Monday through Friday. I would run Monday through Friday. I'd go do stairs Monday through Friday. I'd have wild card weeks where my friend would let me onto the fire watch towers out in Florida. These like 7-story towers. You can look out into the forest for wildfires. I would use that to try to replicate mountains and walk up and down and up and down and up and down and up and down those stairs until my legs wouldn't move. I spent a lot of Friday nights missing parties. Guys like, hey, it's Friday night. We're going to go do this. What are you doing, Brent? And I've always been a very personal person. I didn't tell people, I'm going to the Delta. I'm training for the Delta Force. Leave me alone. I just always say, hey, yeah, I'm busy tonight. And there I am. There I am, rucking at midnight, taking a shower, eating protein, stretching out. And here they are coming back drunk from the party or the bar. Like, oh, Brent, no, there you are. And that showed like, we were just on different paths. Yeah. And I don't look down on them for that path. Part of me is jealous, man. Would have loved to have been, doing that. But, I had my path that I had to be on. It was just something that just wouldn't let me not do this. And to be honest, I didn't even look at him out of jealousy. In a weird way, I probably looked at him like, where's your purpose in life? What are you going to do? I'm just going to party and drink? You're 28 years old. I'd never sell that to him. But, again, we talk, 20-year-old Brent was different than 30-year-old Brent, was different than 40-year-old Brent. That was my inside voice.
So, selection, obviously, from the context, is very physically taxing on the body. I know a lot of unit guys keep those cards close to the chest when it comes to selection because it is a sacred thing. But so I would say the things that are more widely covered and that people already know about, it's a lot of land navigation in the mountains of West Virginia. There's a lot of rucking, and we're talking at breakfast. I think you have a funny story about the 40-miler at the end that you hadn't shared.
I do. That's true. I don't like talking about selection a lot. I think it's something that's sacred and should be a surprise to anyone that's lucky enough to get to experience that amazing school, amazing course, amazing process. The 40-miler is a wide known basically goal that everyone, you may not know it's between the day you show up and the end, or between the day you show up and the end, but everyone knows the end is some sort of 40-mile process. You're counting down the days, and hopefully you're lucky enough to be on that 40-miler. So I will talk about the 40-miler to an extent. There's still several secrets within the 40-milers future candidates would love to know, but won't hear it today. But my 40-miler. So I get my map and I get my coordinates, and I get told, hey, go, this is where you're going. Do you have any questions? Just leave it at that. And I said, no, Sergeant Major. He goes, you're free to leave. So part of me knows it's a 40-mile day. I might have to leave a little something in the reserve. Another part of me is like, it's the last thing I got to do. Like, I'm just going to just gonna red line this thing for 40 miles. No standards. I have no idea how long I have, how short, nothing. So I can't help my excitement, and I'm jogging. And I have a personal rule that I have that I never jog uphill. I walk as fast as I can uphill, and I jog the downhills. I think it's counterproductive to, run uphill, and then be tired and try to recover downhill. So it was a slight uphill incline, but I was so excited I'm jogging. And I had my red light on my head for just a little bit as I'm looking at my map. And I have my little dummy gun. I have my 70 whatever pound rucksack on my back. And I'm looking and I'm running. I'm looking and I'm running. I'm looking and I'm running. And I trip. I don't know what I stubbed my toe on, but I tripped and I garage sail it. I mean, not just like a couple like stuttering steps and fall on my knee. I immediately put out my hands and swan dive into this dirt road. My rucksack comes up and hits me in the back of the head. I'm pancaked on it, and I'm 90 seconds into my 40-miler. I immediately get up and I look back to see if the sergeant major can see me because I feel like I'm within earshot. Look, it's really low light. He probably heard me do a massive umph and as I hit the ground, but I couldn't see him. He couldn't see me, and so I think I've saved myself the embarrassment. And I remember going, oh, gosh, what a way to start this out. Like I'm hurting. Like it was a hell of a fall. Like, well, yeah, well, got that out of the way. Smooth sailing from here, and I start running. And now I got to make up time because now I feel like because I was on the ground for 10 seconds, but brush myself off and I go. I'm down the road 30 or 45 seconds later when I realize, wait a minute, where's my map? My map was in my hand when I tripped. And I don't know where my map is now. It's not in my hand. It's not in my pocket. Where is my map? And I have this absolute gut-wrenching feeling that I've lost. I can't do 40 miles without a map. I'm not, so, and I definitely don't want to go all the way back to the sergeant major and say, hey, this is embarrassing. And the first 90 seconds of my final event, I lost my map. So I go back and I'm looking for the massive imprint in the ground that was my body just a minute ago. And ironically enough, it was pretty easy to find out where I fell before that. And I'm looking everywhere, and there's no map to be found. And my heart, and I'm just, time's a ticking. I'm screwing this up. I look to the side of this dirt road. Now, as I'm going the right way, not that I'm going back the wrong way now, but as I was going the correct way moving forward, there was a massive amount of incline to my right on this dirt road. Of course, the level off of the dirt road, and a deep depression of a black abyss to my left. I don't see my map anywhere. This is clearly where I fell. This is clearly the last time I remember seeing my map. And now I have another heart-sinking feeling of, did I possibly throw my map down this ravine as I fell? And I look over the edge, and there in the cliff of this ridge is my map, barely hanging by a string on the root sticking out of this thing, probably 15 feet down. And I'm like, I can either go back to the sergeant major and ask for a new map and ask for forgiveness, not even, or I got to go down there and get this map. So I take off my rucksack and I start scaling down, holding on to roots on the side of this rock cliff. It sounds a little dramatic, but that's what it was. I get it. I put it in my map. I start climbing up, and I'm breaking roots with my weight on the way up, and I can't get back up. And so I shimmy to the left, and I try to grab these roots or these small trees to get back up, and I'm breaking them, and I'm breaking them. And I keep on moving over and over and over. And I'm about on my last option before I have no other options. and I finally have one that sticks long enough in the side as I pull myself up this cliff to get back on the road. I get my rucksack on finally. Now I have my map, and now I can start my 40. And I can't think of a more dramatic and crappy way to start off your 40 in the history of the Delta Force than I started out the 40 miler.
That's a great story.
Amazing that I made it with that type of introduction of the 40 miler. You would think I was a clumsy ditz that wasn't going to do well after that. Thankfully, I almost hit a time. For the next however long it took me, I absolutely crushed it. Never missed a point, never slowed down, never made a mistake again after that. And I'll say this, I have no problems making mistakes. Clearly, I've made a lot of mistakes, and that wouldn't be the last mistake I made. And I've never prided myself in being a person that cannot make mistakes, but I've prided myself in a person that doesn't make the same mistake twice. I can get pretty creative with my first mistake, but I won't make the same mistake twice. And I think that's something that I would love to, knowledge that and a characteristic trait that I'd love to push down to my son and the next generation.
So on that 40 miler, is it more physical or mental?
It's both. You can't, in a weird way, you can't out physical it and you can't out mental it either. Like I know it sounds like an answer. That's not an answer, but it is both. It is both. It sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not like you do it fresh.
Yeah.
You're doing it at the end of selection. Like you've been losing weight and you've been gathering injuries, this whole time. Like, you very well may started out with a limp. It's not ideal, but with that type of carrot dangled in front of you, it's the last thing you got to do. You'll get it.
So, when you're doing things like that, and you kind of mentioned this before when you said about reading books and just like putting your head in that space before you get into that situation, so you're not surprised by it. So when you're going into this and you know it's going to be extremely difficult, a lot of people don't make it through selection, you probably came up with some answers to yourself when it gets hard and you're spending all this time alone, by the way.
Yeah.
And you're talking to yourself and just you and your thoughts are saying, Brent, why don't you just hang it up, dude? Like, is this really worth it? Like, do you really want it this bad? So what were the answers that you prepared and what was keeping you going?
I hate to sound cliche, but it's just true. Like there just isn't this time where like, Brent, do you really want it? Like, do you want it this bad? Is this what you want? Those, if they were thoughts, they were fleeting thoughts. Like it's just, the mindset's just, I think for someone who's to be successful and actually be the right person in the job, the mindset is only, I can go further. I can go further. I can, there's more in me. I got more left. What else do you have? Like, I don't remember truly questioning myself and my abilities and my stamina and how much I could take or endure. I questioned how much more they could throw at me. I mean, it's just the truth. So yeah. Well, I don't understand that question.
That's fair. Let me give you another one then. So what'd you learn about yourself from spending all that time alone, doing something really hard?
I did learn this. And if people knew me better, they may hear some of my responses that I give to you. It's like, I don't understand that question, or I can do everything I need to do in one magazine.
Yeah.
Those are all truth jokes,
Yeah.
but that's not me. What I learned from myself is that I don't truly believe myself to be any better than the next man. Did I want it more? I think I wanted it more than the next person. And so what I learned about myself was, if you want it enough and you want to work for it hard enough, even someone like me who will trip in the first 90 seconds of the 40 miler can make it all the way to the end. But it's that simple. Like, you just have to want it. And yes, you can make it more complex than that, but at the end of the day, that's the answer. Wish I could remember the movie clip I saw it from, but the guy getting interviewed, he's getting interviewed in the movie. It's part of the movie. And he's the guy who plays Goose in Top Gun 2. And this woman is asking him, and he goes, hey, what's the biggest lie you've ever been told? And he looks at her and goes, it's not that easy. He goes, what's not easy about it? I mean, it's a pretty straightforward question. He goes, no, that's the answer. The biggest lie I've ever been told is it's not that easy. And my God, did he hit the nail on the head on that? Whether it's war, whether it's training for the Delta Force, whether it's going to college, whatever it is, whether it's life, the biggest lie you'll be told is it's not that easy. It is that easy. Things truly do boil down to very simple, straightforward decisions that we have to make in life. And you can muddle it up with all the what ifs and secondary and tertiary effects, but you're only complicating it. And at the end of the day, even when there's a 27-step solution, you don't knock out all 27 steps at the same time. Step 1, step 2, step 3. So that's what I learned about myself. You got to want it.
So the only other thing about selection I'll ask you about is the other part of it, which is, I guess it would be like a board at the end, the commander's board, where they try to rattle you. You get in front of the big boss and a big table full of people, and you're standing there in the spotlight.
It's a tough job interview. It's a tough job interview for a tough job. It's what it should be. And I hope someone here gets to experience it. And if they do, find me and write me. I'd love to hear your experience first, and I'll tell you about mine. Very personable stuff. Very. What is really cool about that community and that very small community is the shared experiences. And so I don't care if you're at OTC 4, we get to talk about, selection and what selection was like for me and him. And we have that shared experience because we essentially went to the same selection 30 years later, his board experience. Of course, his board's going to be different based on who his board members were and this and that. But we both went to a board and a very similar board, and we're both going to have everyone's board is usually pretty interesting. And you're going to have a board story, and so those are cool stories that I hate to say it, are reserved for that for each other and that small community, and they're fun stories. But those are for us. Yeah,
it's unfortunate for us that we don't get to hear them, but
yeah.
If you want to hear them, then go to selection.
That's right.
And make it through.
Yep.
So the last thing on this, it may not even really pertain to actual selection in West Virginia, but I guess psychologically, just to be frank, like the kind of person that can go out on a nightly basis and go shoot people in the face and come home and go to sleep right afterwards. Can you select for that?
I guess we do. Yeah. There's plenty of, even though I think psychologists fall short on the PTSD answer, there's a good use for them. We use them heavily in our selection process. But they're not the only ones that select. It's the reason why we have a board. That board we talked about. You're gonna get a lot of questions thrown at you, and those questions are there for a reason, and they're to find out exactly who you are and what you're made of. And I think the selection process is an ongoing process. So they're going to do their best to select the group of men that they say, and here's a saying that didn't make sense to me at the beginning, and they'll say, "Hey, we're not here to choose the best man for the job. We're here to choose the right man for the job." And you would think, well, isn't the best man for the job the right man for the job? And that's not necessarily true. Like there were guys that were faster, stronger, quicker than me at selection, but they weren't my OTC. So you'd think they're the best man for the job because they're absolute studs. But there's something about them that wasn't the right man for the job. So you get assessed as best you can in the snapshot you have in West Virginia. You have a much bigger snapshot in OTC. And at the end of the day, though, that's still just training. You don't know what someone's made of. My first team leader probably didn't say 6 words to me on that team until we went to combat. He didn't care. He didn't care who I was and what I'd done, and I was the number 1 guy in our class at CQB. He accidentally told me that one time, and he was like, because he hates giving out compliments, to unbattle-proven people. Don't get me wrong, he didn't treat me bad, but he definitely wasn't going to spend his time, treating me good without proving it in combat. It's just who he was. So selection's an ongoing event. So we select for it, and we get it right eventually.
So when you think about the right guy, obviously it makes more sense to you now than it did when you first went through. An example I've heard you give is somebody that can switch gears.
Yeah.
What else comes to mind?
Switching gears is definitely a good analogy I want to talk about a little bit more in. Like, you don't go 100% through the house. There's times I have to slow down and take a shot between someone's eyes, and there's times I got to get back, to 100% to get to the next room. There's constant changing of gears and inside of a house. What makes me hate that analogy or it makes me hate the scenario of football players who are like, oh yeah, I hit them after the whistle, but once I'm in that mindset, I just can't stop. Oh, he stepped out of bounds, I hit him late. Well, I couldn't stop. Like, I was just in that zone of tackling someone. And even though I knew he was out of bounds, I just couldn't stop. If you tell yourself that, yeah, you sure can't stop. Keep telling yourself that. You'll never stop. That would be as crazy as me saying I was just on a roll killing people inside the house. And then when I got to an unarmed civilian, I mowed them down too because I couldn't stop. You're always changing gears from lethal to non-lethal to fast to slow. That is something someone has to be able to do, or they won't make it in the hostage rescue unit. The number 1 characteristic, without a doubt, is problem solving. Problem solving is at the base of everything we do and everything we touch. Take land nav, for example. Land nav is just problem solving. What do all those lines on the map mean? How long is it, what's the best route that I should take from this point to the next point? Is it a straight line? Well, I don't know. What's the terrain between me and a straight line? There's a mountain between us. I don't know. Maybe I should go around it. Maybe I should go right up. How tall is that mountain? Everything is a problem-solving exercise. CQB is problem-solving. The moment you walk through that door, before you get to that door, you're looking at that door. What are the hinges on that door? Is that a pull door? Is that a push door? Is that a metal door? Does it have locks? How many locks does it have? Or as we call them, dogs. When that door opens, is that a corner-fed room? Is that a center-fed room? Is there an immediate threat within 3 feet of my threshold? Yes or no? There's nothing to my front because it's a corner-fed room, then I'm going to make a left and go towards what I'm hoping is to be a threat. Is there an open door, a closed door? The problem solving never stops, and it happens at a much faster level at CQB, at a level that honestly it's hard to understand unless you've done it at a very high level. The problem solving in land nav is a very slow, methodical, yet you'll have to do it for a long time, always be right, and do it when you're tired. It's 2 very different types of problem solving. But at the end of the day, problem solving is the number 1 attribute you can get from your operators. You get a room full of problem solvers that just happen to be motivated, alphas. Well, you got the Delta Force. You got the world's most fierce fighting force that can take on problems that aren't necessarily in their wheelhouse. Syria was not in our wheelhouse. That was a Green Beret problem. Syria should have been marching down Syria, marching down Syria with the Kurds against ISIS. But at the end of the day, you don't always put the best guy for the job. You put the right guy for the job. And the Delta Force is the right guy for any job. They just are.
So you mentioned problem solving as it pertains to CQB. So moving into OTC, which is the operators training course, which trains you similar to, I guess the Q course as a Green Beret, trains you up on how to be a Delta Force operator. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that's pretty known about OTC is that it's very CQB heavy. So is that something that you think you either have it or you don't, or is it teachable?
Both. 100%. Doesn't matter how good you are at land nav and you can carry a rucksack for a month on end. That's going to be our starting point, but it doesn't mean that you're going to be a world-class hostage rescue operator. So that's going to be our starting point. And now we know you're the type of person we want. Can you do the job? And the truth is, we could probably get them to that level eventually, but that's part of the problem solving and assessment process. Is if I have to take this long for you to get good at something, and I have to invest this much time in you to get to a certain level, then you're not as adaptive as we need to be for the future problems that you're going to be asked to go forward on for our country. So even if the answer was yes, we eventually, given enough time, we can get everyone to that level. That's only part of the problem. It's, can you get at that level, and how soon can you get to that level, which means how adaptive are you? How quick are you at problem solving, identifying the problem, identifying the correct problem, and identifying the correct solution to that problem. So it is. People underestimate what a big mental game that it is. And some people have it, some people don't. Some people are in the middle and could get there, but getting there eventually still doesn't get you the prize.
That's interesting. So here, when you get picked up at selection, you go to OTC, you're a seasoned Green Beret at this point. You've done several combat deployments.
No.
And in OTC, they take you back to square one, where a guy is watching you dry fire a pistol at a wall.
Yeah.
So what can you say about that curriculum and just taking you all the way back and building you all the way back up?
They just don't care. They don't care where you came from. They don't care what you did. They don't care how many missions you have. They don't. It's almost, I don't know the best way to describe it. It's like telling a Major League Baseball player, "Hey, let me tell you how many home runs I hit in the minors." They don't care. Like, it's a cool story. They know they're at a different level. They're more than happy to show you they're at a different level, and they have the experience on missions that I would eventually go on to go, this is different. This is different. This is a different problem set. They go after a different set of terrorists that do not want to go quietly and may have some more security with them that guys I went after did not have. So they're very unapologetic about it, as they should be. They're the best. There's nothing to apologize for. There's no reason to say, hey, just trust me, you should do it this way. It'll be good for you. They just tell you this is the way you do it, and because of the type of people they are and what they've proven to be, you blindly follow it. And we did. And at the end of the day, because you couldn't outshoot any of them, so you might want to do what they did to figure out how it is that they became that. And that is such a slow and painful part of the process, which is undoing all your bad habits. In fact, I can go for seven and almost say the more experience you have, at the end of the day, that's just more stuff they have to undo because you don't do things their way. And now everyone has to do things the Delta Force way. And so, especially when it comes to pistol shooting and trigger manipulation, trigger squeeze, trigger control, reset, they're going to make sure you don't have any bad habits in there, because the bad habits that you can get away with here and there will show eventually, and this 6-month course where they're going to take you through the most advanced stress-induced course of fire, and your bad habits will show. So they have to break you down to dry firing a pistol in front of a wall for hours. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Feel like it's like your wax on, wax off moment. Like, really? Wash these guys' cars next? What is going on?
What's this the saying? Performing the commonplace under uncommonplace conditions.
Yeah. No, it just, people want to hear some magical thing the Delta Force does, that we morph through walls or have these like tactics that no one knows about. They'll think you came from a wall as fast as they came through that door. It is on a level that to this day amazes me. But no, we just do the basics, and we do the basics way better than anyone else and way faster, and we get to do them more often. Now, there's a couple tricks we got up our sleeves, but you'd be disappointed to know we just do it better than everyone else. We do the same thing, just better than everyone else.
Going back to, you just made a comment about how fast everything is. You think that they come through a wall. And I got to ask you about, during OTC, it's been said that in your training group, when your instructors are showing you how to hit a target, to show you just how fast it is, they will sit you next to a hostage and do a live fire run on the room with live ammunition.
The hot seat. I don't know if that's a myth. I've seen the videos. I've seen the recruiting videos of someone doing that. I've read the books, of Beckwith and Haney, talking about that. I don't know at what point we stopped doing that. We did not do that during my tenure. I don't think it's something we're looking to bring back. I don't know why we stopped it. I know it wasn't because of an incident, because I do know of all the fatalities and incidents that we don't hide anything. We painstakingly put everything out, the good and the bad, to learn from it. So I don't know when that went away, but it went away.
I think that's probably a good thing.
It's probably a good thing, but you know what? After that environment and given that, I'd sit down in that seat any day of the week and trust my guys to shoot right by my face. Wouldn't even think about it. That's how good they are.
So in terms of the other parts of the instruction, they bring in, let's say, a CIA officer to teach you guys tradecraft. Maybe they'll bring in an ex-con to teach you how to break open a door or break into a car and breach different targets. What was your favorite part of the instruction?
I think this is something that is probably a misconception of the unit, is that they're cowboys and that they feel like they're the best at everything, and they're these prima donnas that can't be coached or talked to. And that is not the culture of the unit. Now, don't get me wrong. If you're asking the unit, who's the best in the world at hostage rescue CQB, I'll tell you we are. And I'll tell you there's no one that can come in and teach us about hostage rescue CQB. We are the best in the world at it. But we're not the best in the world at everything. I'm not the best in the world at jumping out of an airplane. I'm just not. Am I really good at it? I'm really good at it. But there's someone on a Red Bull team that I could bring in that has 10,000 jumps that can tell me a little bit more about specific skills. Do I believe I'm the best combat shooter in the world? Yes. Not me personally, the Delta Force. Do I believe we're the best combat shooters in the world? Yes, because they prove it night in, night out. With rounds going by them, that they'll stand tall and deliver a fatal round right back, more accurate than the one you sent them. They're the best combat shooters in the world. Are they the best shots in the world? Jerry Micklick may have something to say about that, and he's come out to the unit. Rob Latham may have something to say about that. He's come out or we've gone to them, and learned from them. So we will go out and find the best at a particular skill set and learn from them. You know, we bring in drivers, we bring in shooters, we bring in guys that jump out of airplanes. Heck, we got tired of setting buildings on fire randomly, which happens when you're throwing explosives, throwing flashbangs, and you're in these Middle Eastern countries with these fluffy rugs all over the floor where the explosives are going off. It's a good recipe for fire. So you know, one of my teammates was like, you know what? I feel like we've set some houses on fire over the years. Yeah, we have set some houses on fire over the years. He's like, you think it'd be advantageous for us to go do firefighter training and learn more about, you know, fires and how long we can stay in a house if it catches on fire? If we catch a house on fire and we have to save the hostage, maybe we should know about that. How long we have to stay in the house, how to maneuver into, and we were like, that's probably something we should know. You know, a couple of months later, there we are at the New York City Firefighter Academy doing a week-long crash course in suits, in fire suits, and learning all about fires, and hanging out with New York firefighters on the back of trucks, going on calls, living the firefighter life for a week. It was a good time. So yeah, we'll go get expert instruction from a lot of places.
That's awesome. Man, I love Jerry Michalak.
Oh man, and his daughter's quite a shot too.
Yeah,
she's gonna take over the business.
Yeah, I mean the unit's certainly got the budget.
I was disappointed with SF at times. Now, SF's one of those weird things. It's like my little brother, right? Like I'll make fun of my little brother, but you better not make fun of my little brother. You know, SF. I really could. I could sit here. If you only want me to tell you about the good things about SF, I could go for days talking about the good of SF and the coolest missions that I did within SF, and just things I wouldn't trade for. But I could also tell you some pretty bad things about SF, and aren't necessarily SF ODA problems. The Siege of Sodaf was a horrible, horrible concept that really, many could argue should have never been implemented. Within SF doctrine, the ODB isn't even supposed to be within the same country of the ODAs. They're supposed to work independently of a headquarters, and headquarters is supposed to do it from afar. I'm sorry, the AOB, which is the B team, the C team, or which they're rarely referred to, or battalion never moves forward with the B teams and the A teams. So the CONOP process, having ODAs do 40-page CONOP process to get out the door and fight bad guys, ridiculous. So it's a weird animal like that. But let me tell you what never disappointed. Delta Force didn't disappoint me from selection to OTC to my first team to my last team to the budget and everything in between. It was the Disneyland of tactics. They were all evil, but there are levels of evil, and ISIS takes the cake. What they did with kids and training kids and burning the Jordan pilot alive while he's still in a cage, it made it very personal, and I enjoyed every single one of them we killed. So I fill him up with like 6, 7, 8 rounds, and I go to transition to the next guy. I give him the good news just like I gave the good news to his 2 friends. All this is happening quick. Boom, 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 boom. Final guy. I can see plain as day. This guy's a lot closer at shooting me than I am shooting him. Maybe I don't call my wife tonight. Maybe I don't see my kids again. You've accepted your fate that this may be your last night on Earth, and that's okay because you got a job to do.